Good morning. We got a good show for you today. We're going to get right to it. I did some math yesterday, and so let me introduce what this week's been like. This has been a really busy week, which is why I haven't done too many live feeds. I've been, I think at one day I booked like 8 loads, um, because we've got a couple of guys that were running short, and all the stuff that I book for like trucking, I am putting into the TMS system, and it's funny because Jeff's always busy. I don't know why he goes live in the middle of the day, because it's just not a good time for him. His evening live feeds tend to do a little bit better, and excuse me, I got a frog in my throat or something. Anyways, we got our morning coffee. We got the heavy metal mug. By the way, I should have a new coffee mug next week. I got the thing. So the Teespring link should be in the deal. I've got merch now. So so there's that. There's my sales pitch, right? Anyways, so I've been watching a few or listening to a few videos while I was out driving around yesterday and running some errands, and a lot of people are arguing about things that really, in my eyes, don't really matter as much. And I think that sometimes we as people, when it comes to business, health, just self improvement, um, we're all overwhelmed with this noise, right? For some reason, fuel surcharge seems to be a huge argument. I don't know why. It doesn't matter because it doesn't concern me, because I get what I get, right? And and fuel is a big expense, but I guarantee that a lot of people that are arguing about fuel surcharge don't know how to get a good fuel discount. I mean, things like that. Is the broker making too much money? Well, I'm pretty sure that the brokers thought that we were taking too much money, a while back. So it's a give and take situation. That's how business is. Um, I know people that, and Ratman could attest to this. Sometimes you have a business for 5 years and not make any profit at all, right? I know. I know. Reading some comments here. I'm laughing. I'll get to the comments here in a second. But sometimes the business doesn't make money at all for the first, 1 to 5 years, right? So, and I think that's the problem, and so the argument, well, you got to treat this trucking thing like a business, well, that's true, but you also have to know that businesses have ups and downs, and trucking is no different. And especially if you're in the spot market, especially if you're calling brokers and everything. And then also, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the dispatch service, and how, in a way, I'm not a dispatch service. I'm a little bit more than that. So, but it's not about me. It's about you. My live feeds aren't to sell you. I mean, yeah. Do I have a link up for my Teespring? Yeah, but it's like, buy it, cool. If not, no big deal, right? And if you're selling shirts, Teespring's the way to go, because I don't have to worry about shipping. I don't have to worry about going to the post office. I don't have to worry about making them. They're done. But I did order a sample for myself to see if they're good quality. So if you guys want to wait till I get some of the stuff in the mail for myself, because if anything is below quality, I will take it off the listing. So there's that, because it's not about making money. It's just about spreading a message. Strength for today, hope for tomorrow. If I can only get my own line of beard oil and coffee, I'd be a happy man, which I'm a happy man anyways, right? So we'll do some shout outs, and then we'll get right to what I created. That is an interesting name there. I love spinach. Big Rig CEO, what's up? Red Diesel, yo. CDN, Freight Broker, good morning. Jerome, good morning. All right, man. Morning from West Texas. Good deal. Truck for Life. I have not seen your video yet. I saw you announce some of the good news. I don't know if you announced it all the way, but I will definitely get to that today because today is a light day when it comes to dispatch. Fate Trucking, what's up? I think you guys will, if you're an owner operator, I think you're going to like what today's live feed, or you may not like what today's live feed is going to bring. Jason, what's up? Good morning from the PPG Arena in Pittsburgh, PA. Stay off of Kensington, or is that no? That's Philly. Never mind. Just stay off the streets. Be all right. Congratulations on your dispatch service success. Time builds growth and success. Thank you, CDN, and we will talk about that towards the end of the video. Big Rig CEO, yes. I can hear his voice when I read that sentence. That's funny. Nothing Witty is in the house. Grafton, what's up? Dice Man going live. How's it going? Let's get some more people in here. Jesse, what's up? Let's see. Trucker for Life. Good morning. Scott SRO. Good morning. Sorry, I got distracted there. Frame, what's up? Draco, maybe you can run a special Snorler coffee flavor at Coffee Shop of Horrors. Yeah, if you want to set me up with those people, I think that'd be cool. Running Aces, good morning, Snorlord. What's up? Let's see. CDN says, I believe while I was on the merged call and video you're referring to, my comments were not coming across correctly. I was not hearing everything, which leads to heated discussion. Unfortunate result. I did not get that far. I got as far as Eric playing the section of Jeff's video with Dean, and a lot of good points were made. And I was just sitting there listening to that. And look, this is not a criticism of the video. This is more about, I think that there's too many arguments on everything in general, and so, let's look at diet, right? Let's diet and workout. There's 1,000 million ways to do it, right? There's 1,000 million ways to do it. And I'm the kind of person that wants to filter all the noise and just get down to the root core of the problem. And that was kind of my job when I was a trainer, is find out, why are you backing like that? Why are you, and mindset is a big thing too. Like, one of the struggles of new drivers in the industry is if you're a family man, well, your kids are going to miss you. And I have experience with that on both sides. I was a kid, my dad was a truck driver. I had to deal with that. And then as a parent, I had to deal with that. So I get it. And so I try to help people through that. Because if you're not happy in the truck, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. And then someone said something yesterday that made that just blew my mind, right? And it's not what you make, it's what you spend, right? What good's getting 30 grand a month if you're spending 28,000 of it and have nothing to show for it? That to me is attractive as far as that concept, because it simplifies it. Look, I'm kind of a dummy, right? And I know Pigtail hates it when I insult myself, but hear me out on this. When you get into the complexities, people start to take advantage of those complexities to distort and distract. For example, the White House has redefined what an official recession is, right? Because they want to complicate the formula so everybody can't sit there and like, we're in a recession, and that's exactly what happens in all businesses. I mean, think about buying a car. The complexities that are involved in buying a car, because you're not really buying a car, you're buying a loan, as Ratman has pointed out. And I just recently dealt with that, to the point that, what, this is stupid, I'm fixing this car. And that's what we did. And it saved me about $8 grand. Boom. It's not what you make, it's what you spend. It's what you save, right? And so this concept can go with anything you're doing, like a house budget. If you're on a limited income, and so today's video, I did a bunch of numbers. I did a bunch of numbers on fuel, and it's so, the math is so basic. You don't need fancy software. You don't need a mathematician. You don't need a degree. You don't need a CPA to figure out this formula, which could help you realize what your business is really doing. Okay. And I think that's the problem. If someone's underbidding me, you can make the assumption that they don't know their numbers. Well, maybe they do know their numbers. And Eric made a good point that, if someone comes in, if a plumber comes in to fix your plumbing, there's no negotiation of price. The guy has a set price. He doesn't ask you how much money you have in the bank. He doesn't ask you what your income is. He doesn't care what your house payment is, right? This is my fee. This is what I do, right? And so as a business person, now, if you run a flea market or a place where, like a guitar store is notorious, where you can negotiate some things, right? But for the most part, most services are, this is what you get. You might get a discount for this, you might get a promo code for that, but the reality is, it's not. It's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty simple. Keep it simple, stupid, right? When it comes to diet, I keep it simple. If it, as Big Rig CEO has pointed out, if it, when we were talking about diet stuff, if it didn't have a mom and didn't come out of the ground, you don't eat it, pretty much. And guess what? You're going to be healthy, right? But the problem is we've our reality's been distorted, on what real food is, and the same thing has happened in business. Business has been distorted. You have businesses that look like they're making a lot of money and they're not. And so what I did was I took the time on pen and paper and a calculator and figured out some numbers that might surprise you if you're not keeping track. If you are keeping track, then you're going to be like, well, Steve, this is boring. Do something else. It's about mindset. Logistically disturbed. Good morning. Looking left, looking right, looking into the camera. Okay. So I reached out and offered apology on how the call went down and was not intentional, but he is pretty mad. I think he thinks I'm now an idiot as to no response to my text. I wouldn't take it personal. And again, I have no idea. I have a small idea of what's going on because of people have said, oh yeah, there was an argument or whatever. And that's the thing, people. Why are we arguing on YouTube, right? Because when you have and because sometimes you can make a good point, and CDN, and you've seen this too. You make a valid point, and people want to argue just for the sake of arguing. And the reality is none of it matters. None of it matters on your deathbed. None of it matters. At the end of the day, you're gonna, people are gonna go out of business anyways, right? Big Houston, what's up, Rick? Donnie, Luke, good morning. All right, so what I did was, we're going to talk about fuel for a second, okay? This is how important fuel mileage is. Now, how you get your good fuel mileage is completely dependent on many things. And again, it's a simple system, but it's not. And I guess that's a redundant statement. But one of the things that you have to look at is, what's the fuel mileage of your truck at certain speeds, right? Everybody's making a big deal about this 55 thing that Truckers Coach talks about. That's one method, right? But it depends on how the truck is geared and the freight you have. If you're trying to do 55 with 45 in the box, that's a challenge, and the engine's actually working harder. If you're doing 75, same result, right? So there's got to be a middle ground, right? I've always been a middle person. I've always been the middle ground person. I've always been a good mediator between two sides. And the basic formula is you divide your number of miles that you drove for the week or for the day or for the month by the final cost of fuel. And you divide that number by days worked. You can also divide the day's work by final cost fuel. So you can look at your cost per mile and your cost per day on your fuel. So if you work 20 days and you had X amount of dollars, you divide that number, boom, there's your cost per day on fuel. Same thing with miles. And I'll give you an example of numbers that I came up with. 2,000 miles at 6 miles per gallon is 333.33 gallons times 450. Now hear me out. $4.50. Hear me out. Is $1,499.99. Divide that by 2,000. You're looking at 74 cents per mile. Divide that by 5 days, because 2,000 miles you could probably do in 5 days, I would hope, is $299 a day. So basically 300 days or $300 per day. Pretty simple. Now, gee, Steve, why did you do it at 450? Well, because fuel discounts or whatever, some of our guys are getting, fuel for 450 and below. But so I did the same math at 2,000 miles, 6 miles per gallon at $5.50 a gallon. Now you're looking at $1,833. Divide that by 2,000. That's 91 cents per mile. And that's $366 per day, an increase of $66. Okay. So when fuel spiked, all of a sudden you were spending an extra $66 per day if you're working 5 days a week at 2,000 miles. So I did the same math at 2,500 at 6 miles per gallon. At $4.50 a gallon, it came out to 74 cents per mile, or $374, and change per day. These are all rounded up or down numbers, for the sake of me not repeating too many things, because I can't talk very well. At $5.50 a gallon, you're looking at 460 gallons of fuel. That comes out 91 cents per mile on a 2,500 mile week. Comes out to $458 per day on a 5-day week. Now, the 3,000 is interesting because I divided it by 5 and also divided by 6. You got to be really cooking with some good dropping hooks or a long run to get 3,000 miles in 5 days. I don't think that's even possible. It might be, who knows. So divide that number by 6. And so you're looking at 500 gallons at 3,000 miles a week, if you're getting 6 miles per gallon. And that came out to 75 cents per mile, at 450. And it came out to 91 cents a mile at 550. So the increase is what is catching people up, is what's catching people off guard. If you suddenly went to the store and a loaf of bread, which you shouldn't be buying, bread's evil, right? Let's use steak, for example. Let's do a much better food item. If a steak costs $5 a pound, right? And then one day you went in there and now it's $8 a pound, and then it got to $12 a pound. How much steak you buying? Well, you have that choice. I'm not going to buy that steak. So you figure out ways to get steak below that price. Well, fuel is the same way, people. So people are like, well, my truck gets better than 6 miles per gallon. Well, I did that math too. Let's get 7 miles per gallon, because the reality is this: fuel mileage is more dependent on how your truck's geared and what's in the box. That's it. Or on the trailer if you're a flatbed or whatever. And so sometimes you get 6, sometimes you get 8. I know that when I first bought my Kenworth, the first load I did was a load of empty bottles going from St. Louis to Glendale, West Virginia. I think my gauge showed over 9 on miles per gallon, because it was literally a 2,000-pound load. But so I'm thinking I'm getting 9 miles per gallon, but my IFTA was consistently between 6 and 6.5. I don't speed. I pretty much stay a little bit below the speed limit in a 65 mile per hour state. I'm usually generally there's 2 green marks on your dash, and I try to keep the needle between those marks. That's the magic number and the truck's diagnostics will even tell you how much time you're in what they call the sweet spot. You find the sweet spot. Every truck is different. And if you're running 55 with heavy loads, you're not saving any fuel. If you're doing 75 with a light load, you're not probably with a non-aerodynamic truck, you're not saving fuel. And so generally between 6, and for idling, right? You can have the most fuel efficient truck ever, but if you're idling, that will take an 8 mile per gallon average to 6 pretty quickly, especially if you do that during the 34. You have to do a 34 on the road. You might as well, and you don't have an APU, you might as well just get a hotel room if you can, if it's possible, or just hang out in the TV room in the truck stops. That's what I did when I had my Peterbilt. Don't spend $10K to fix a $2K problem. And a lot of us do things like that, right? Big Houston, Rick, what's up? Donnie. According to Fox News, we are in a recession. If that's true, why is everything still expensive? What's up, DIY? Big Rick CEO, when I quote a price, I quit saying I could do it for, or I need X for that. Instead, I say I charge, or more often, my price for that lane is, and I don't negotiate. There you go. And wording is a big deal. CDN sent me a good podcast about wording in sales, right? Use the term we a lot. And there's Cool Trucking called me the other day, and he was like, I guess I came up with a negotiation tactic that I had mentioned, and he's like, how did you even think of that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I know how to read a room, right? My years of playing out in the show, and then this live feed stuff comes naturally to me. I know how to read a room. It's a little bit harder in the live feed on the internet, because you just see a number like we've got 34 people in here. I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't know what you guys are thinking. I don't know how many of you are watching me going, Steve, you're an idiot, and the other half are going, wow, Steve is right, or the other half, I'm just background noise while I take a dump. Who knows, right? And so it's hard to do that on phone and an email, right? And a lot of brokers have gone to email because they have the language barrier. I dealt with that earlier this week, or the driver has the language barrier, or they just don't want to hear you gripe about their prices. Or they don't want to hear you gripe about your fuel prices. When a plumber comes to the house, as Eric pointed out, I don't care what his expenses are. Now, if he overcharges me, I'm like, wow, when I see that they show up in a shiny new everything, and I'm thinking, man, this guy's going to be high probably. The same thing. If you're driving a Peterbilt 389 and the truck next to you is driving a Freightliner, you know, 2023 model, um, who's getting the better fuel mileage? Who's going to net more? When you're talking to a broker on the phone, they don't care what your hood looks like. They don't care what your truck looks like. They just want the job done. They don't want to lessen in your expenses. And most drivers don't know their expenses anyways. Yeah, I agree. Some doesn't agree with me. We can still be friends. Yep. Number one factor of fuel mileage is the right foot. To a certain extent, yes. But, time is of the essence as well. And so I think there's a sweet spot, and it's in the 60s, I think. I mean, look at the big carriers. What do they govern their trucks at? People are so focused on what DAT says they should charge instead of developing a formula specifically for their business based on their costs, and that's the problem, because the DAT board doesn't care what your home expenses are. The DAT board doesn't care what your fuel costs are. The DAT board is a monitor. Any low board rate lane lookup is a monitor of what that lane is going for, and to be aware of the lanes, but also be having the skill and the knowledge to get out of a negative situation. If you're going to take a load to Denver, you better have a strategy coming out. If you're going to take a load to California, you better have a strategy coming out. And, I did all this work, and I'm not even reading the 7 miles per gallon. Let's just say that 3,000 miles at 7 miles per gallon, you're still looking at 64 cents per mile or 78 cents per mile. So that's how much of a difference. So at 3,000 at 7 miles per gallon, is 64 cents a mile, but at 6 miles per gallon, it's 75 cents a mile. Well, 10 cents. So that's what? That's 11 cents difference per mile. And if you do, say you do 120,000 miles in a year, that's $13,200. What can you do with $13,200? That's why big hoods are usually great for specialized, or fuel mileage isn't a factor in your business. Bro, let me ask you this question. What's more important to monitor, miles per gallon or rate per mile? Or RPMs? Okay, RPMs. Well, both. I mean, there's not a clear answer. If you're doing a light load and you keep it, look, a lot of these automatics are geared to where, you're only at 11.5 on the RPMs. That's where your fuel savings comes in. But, it's dependent on the load. It's dependent on the terrain. It's dependent on, hell, even the heat of the day affects tires. Your tires affect fuel. There's so many different things with the fuel. I noticed that throughout the years as my tires got, more worn down, that my IFTA kept going up. The IFTA report is the ultimate monitor of how you're doing on your fuel mileage, because it's literally taking the source from how many miles you've ran to how many gallons of fuel you bought. So if you're an owner operator or a carrier owner and you see your IFTA, and trucking office will track your IFTA, to a degree if you're accurate with your miles. That is what tells the story of fuel mileage, because if you're an idler, that's going to bring your fuel mileage down. I don't care how good you are with saving fuel on the right foot. If your truck idles, it kills that. I'm going to go back to Big Rig's comment here. Knowing your numbers and having a goal is huge. Now, where the DAT average says, that's pretty much going to tell you the area that everybody else is at. DAT board just put up a new app that's called DAT One, and I like it a little bit better because it gives you a range of what people are doing, and that's a report of what people are doing. I've literally asked for 1,000 more than the DAT board has even mentions, and I've gotten it. And there's no formula for negotiating. People can argue about whether you set the acre or what have you. You're providing a service, so you have to prove that you're providing a service. But a lot of times you're talking to brokers that don't care about your service. They just want the load off their computer screen. And that's where it's hard to negotiate. That's where it's hard to read the room, as I've said, right? But knowing your lane, right? And be a little bit personal. Like, hey, man, it's hot today, and I hope you guys aren't seeing the same heat we are. But a lot of times they don't give you that window. There's no, hey, how's it going? In an email, right? And so just in an email, it gives you an opportunity to not let yourself get in your way. that's the positives of email. The negatives of email is that when loads are flying super fast, I'm sitting here waiting on a response. That gets a little bit irritating. But I'm sure that there's emails that brokers have given me that I did not respond to as well. Charge what you need. Okay, so that's great, Cascade, but most people don't know what they need, right? And the DAT average gives you, any load board average gives you of what is the potential of that lane. So if you're going to sit there in Miami for 3 days wondering why you can't get $3 a mile because that's what you need, then that's a problem. These people that sit there will tell you to ignore the DAT averages, but then they'll sit there and tell you to know your lanes. Well, how do you know the lanes? Well, you have to go by the averages. You have to know that taking a load to Arizona is going to pay more than taking a load out of Arizona. And how do you do that? You look at the lane averages. And if those lane averages don't suit your needs, don't go there. Or learn the law of averages. In other words, if you take a load to Miami and you take you deadhead out, or you take a low paying load to come out, because that's the only way you're doing it because of that lane, then you average both the loads together. And the thing about these fuel prices is that deadheading out to a better area kills the profit because of these fuel prices, right? You've been on the DASH diet for the last 2 weeks. I lost 10 pounds. Whatever works, man. Whatever works. You haven't missed anything, Dennis. in a manual RPMs, right? TNI doesn't seem to care that those trucks are pretty fast, more than 70. That's it right there. The goal is to not be a rate chaser, rather be a rate setter. And there's definitely some validity to that. So here's what we're going to do. I've said my piece. We're going to put the link in. If anybody wants to come in and discuss what I've said, no arguments, no shutting people down, no, you know, there's the link. If you want to come in, if you're driving, have the camera off. You shouldn't be watching this if you're driving, listening maybe. Did your title essay cost me $1,500? Put in my name. Huh. That's interesting. Huh. Well, was that sales tax? Because I know that in Missouri I'm sales tax exempt on a vehicle when it comes to the semi and the trailer. But I don't know how Wisconsin does it. I am sipping on just good old fashioned Folgers, black coffee, and my, I don't know, Phil. Oh, I got to do it this way. Iron Maiden mug, because Sage has yet to buy me a green screen. That's the only way I'm getting a green screen is if Sage buys it for me. It's got to be one of those portable ones that I got to fold out. Start over. No. You can't tell me what to do. Congress, I'm paying off your truck. I have no idea what that means. Yeah, I would have looked to see if you have to pay sales tax on that truck, because a lot of DMV people don't realize that. Like I had to go to Missouri's website and download a I forget the number, but it's a special form, and to tell them that the truck is tax exempt, because they tried to. I mean, can you imagine paying sales tax on $180,000 vehicle? I'm sure rich people do it all the time, but not me. I'm not rich. So the bottom line is we can argue about numbers, we can argue about fuel mileage, we can argue about what's the best way to save fuel, what's the best way to save expenses, what's the best way to negotiate. Low bore tools are great, low bore tools are crap. And the reality is that most people don't know their numbers. Most people don't know how to code a lane. Most people don't know how to find the good lane, and no one knows how, and a lot of people don't know how to get themselves out of a bad situation that they put themselves in. Yeah, they shouldn't. Again, I don't know how Wisconsin works, but I don't think they should have charged you sales tax. Night driving is the most efficient way to save MPGs. Yes, because you're not worried about traffic. Traffic tends to be lighter unless you're driving through Washington, D.C. Now, but your APU and or truck idling is going to be worse throughout the day if it's hot or if it's cold. So there's that. It's a lot easier for APU to keep you comfortable at night than it is during the day, depending on where you're at. So I mean, but again, it's like everybody has their methods of doing things, right? And that people don't see the forest from the trees, right? They're focused on a tree in front of them. You know, there are people arguing about certain aspects of this business that don't even track their own numbers. And they're lying to themselves if they think they are. It's probably their ad valorem tax. See, we don't have that here. We've got property tax at the end of the year. I pay about $1,000 in property taxes for my equipment. That's because they're not watching you and Jeff. They're watching butt cheeks. And again, that you have to be focused away from the noise, right? And yeah, do we need a break from talking about trucking? Absolutely. I mean, you know, DIY and I have done the book review thing, which is going pretty good. You know, I do the jam sessions on the other channel. You know, every now and then I'll talk about health. You know, um, but for the most part, these morning coffee live are just my thoughts on trucking and business and whatever you guys want to talk about. Because at the end of the day, what are your needs? And how can you achieve your goals? And I am not perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. And so when it comes to the dispatch service, I don't see myself as a dispatch service. I see myself as more of a consultant. I help you find the lanes. You know, I help you with your plan. If you want to run short because you need to be home every other day, I can do that. If you want to run long because you want to make X amount of dollars per month, if it's realistic, I can do that. I have a network of brokers and a network of friends and a network of contacts that allow me to accomplish the things that I've accomplished in whatever strategy I can create. And to be honest, I've had a couple of drivers not make it, but that was because of how they either didn't have a strong foundation or they couldn't afford to keep their truck. So that truck cost them money, it cost them downtime, which costs money. Or their truck or trailer payments were way expensive and they got no money in the bank and no credit. You have to create a solid foundation. And developing a strategy is what I do. You know, and if there's something that's not doable, I will tell you. You know, I'm not the guy that's like, well, yeah, look, I'm not the guy that's gonna like put you or advise you a situation that I know is a failure, right? In other words, if you have some challenges, I'm going to tell you. Like if you go, hey, I want to be home every day and I need to make, 10 grand a week. I'm the kind of guy that's not going to tell you that's impossible, but I will tell you, dude, that's going to be a challenge. And here's what you can realistically expect. And if that doesn't suit your needs, we need to come up with a different strategy. That's what I do. Dispatch services, a lot of them don't do that. A lot of them don't care about what your expenses are. I take into account your expenses. I take into account your goals. I take into account of how you want to run and what your needs are, which is what you should be doing, to be honest. I don't take control of your business. It is a partnership. Just check Wisconsin has a sales tax exemption for commercial vehicle. And it's very possible that the DMV person did not recognize that. I know that every time I have to go to the DMV, I have to fill out the form. They still try to charge themselves. I'm like, no, did you not see this form I just put out in front of you? All right. Shannon, good morning. Virtual hug. Morning, Shannon. I will get Steve to text me your number later. There you go. Why is it Iron Man on the Rock Hall of Fame? I thought they were just added. I don't know. Oh no, that was Judas Priest. Look, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's a joke. That's why Iron Maiden associate themselves with jokes, not in that sense. It's and look, we can sit there and argue about what the brokers are making. We can sit there and argue about fuel surcharge. We can sit here and argue about miles per hour. We could sit here and argue miles, rate per day versus rate per mile. And the bottom line is that track your numbers, have the mindset to overcome, adapt, and overcome. If you see a good paying load going to Denver, you better have a plan to come out. If you're just going to go off the fly, then don't have expenses so high that one missed day puts you under. Don't put yourself in a situation where the turbo goes out in your truck, you're out of business. I got a call from a friend of mine who just literally was, a repair list of repairs that was going to cost about $6,000 became $15,000. That's how quickly it can change on you. And it's all about mindset, people. How do you overcome obstacles? That's with anything in life, really. You take trucking business out of it. How do you deal with stuff? Are you taking care of yourself physically and mentally? No, there's no diet, Rick. I just don't eat certain foods, for the most part when I can help it. But yes, I still, every now and then I'll stray, but when it comes to like breaded foods or starchy foods, but I avoid sugar like the plague as much as I can. And I'm just meat and vegetables, man, for the most part. Shannon says, right. Shannon, I missed your live feed last night. I know that you're live. I guess your AC went out. Is that a hotel room you're in? AC compressor goes out. That could be, $2,000, right? So, I mean, and that's the basics. That's why a lot of these, let's help people with their trucking business type videos. A lot of it is just echo chambers because people are forgetting the most basic concepts. Mindset, expenses. It's not what you make, it's what you spend. It's as simple as that. It's a simple formula. My formulas are simple. It's under warranty. Good deal. Good deal. But it still costs you downtime in a hotel room, right? Big Rig, if you're going to be in the trucking business, it's imperative that you know everything about your business, including tax laws and your numbers. Otherwise, you're just winging it and hoping the best, which is how I started. That is how I started. I was just, let me give you some history. These things that I say, I know from experience, not because I'm educated, not because I'm smarter than you, because I'm not because I'm a know-it-all, not because I have this ego to be fed. It's because I've made these mistakes. And by the grace of God, it did not take me out. It still could. I could go out and run that truck tomorrow and the engine could blow. Guess what? I'm not buying another truck. I'm done. Someone's getting a pretty good deal on a trailer at that point. Right? Dispatch service is doing well. For every driver that I lose due to external circumstances, I gain. I gain one. And that's kind of how it is owning a carrier as well. For every one that you lose, you gain one. And in this game, in the spot market, you really got to know your number. Look, if you're making a mileage, if you're dispatched from your company and you're making a rate per mile as a lease operator, there's pretty much keeping your expenses down is it comes to fuel and whatever your home needs, right? And well, you know what your truck needs are as well. But I mean, it's the same concept, but there's really not much control there. And the problem with the spot market is when you work and heed these words, people that are thinking about coming to like trucking from a dispatch carrier or a closed low board carrier like Landstar, Schneider, or whatever, is you better know how to handle the freedom that you're about to get. It's kind of like being at a buffet. You better know how to handle the freedom that you're about to get. And there's a lot more pitfalls that could take you out as much as there is a lot of new opportunities that you didn't have before. And so it could be overwhelming. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Not bad, yourself?
Oh, not too bad. I'm fired up this morning. I'm tired of talking. You take over.
You're tired of talking?
Yep,
Yeah,
I'm
I
going to
figured I'd come
highlight
on
performance here.
and I'll use your platform as my means to, since I don't know if I must have definitely upset Sage, which was not the intent. And I discovered that, hopefully the audio is good, but yeah, I discovered that merge calls can sometimes make it a challenge. So I just wanted to kind of give my side, because that's, if Eric, hopefully he'll listen to this. Sandman and I did not have an attack plan. It was to kind of take a step back. I didn't even get a chance to mention what I wanted to start when I came onto the call was how it came down was Sage went live with his logistics show, and I just said hello in the thing, and he goes, "Oh, CDN, we might, I want to get you in here." And he had a guest come in talking about some of the terminology around recessions and things of that nature, and bull market versus, he had some, basically his first guest was talking about economy stuff. Excellent guy. That guy, I must say, if you haven't watched it, he definitely knows his stuff. His guest, I don't know who the guy was, but whoever he was, I want to compliment Sage because that guy was good. He was concise, to the point, and really, really provided some definitions, right? On what's happening with the marketplace. So that was an excellent interview that he did there. And then Sage went into, using the fair use, that he basically wanted to, he says he reached out to the dean, trying to get him to come on the show. Maybe, I don't know the circumstances there. And then he started going through Jeff's video and then kind of dissecting Dean's comments. And
Okay.
then he said, because he wanted to have Dean to come on and let them have a little discussion about those comments. And then as he's going through it, because the dean wasn't coming on, he says, "I'm going to give my little 2 cents," which is fine. And then he says, "Well, because his other guest couldn't come in. He was ill or something like that. So then he thought, hey, I'm going to call Sandman." So he called Sandman. And so Sandman picked up, and they're into the call, and he's asking questions. They're going about it. And I just thought, you know what? Like, I know Sandman just through Jeff's channel. I've interacted with him on the phone a couple times, and we've exchanged a few emails. That's it. And the same with the dean. It was that one live feed on Jeff's I was on that I met the dean, and we chatted after the call a couple, I think once or twice, and we've exchanged a few emails. But I just know that in my conversations with him, I thought, the dean is, and same with Sandman, both of those guys are in the trucking industry, but they have a background before the trucking industry. And my perceptions of them is, these guys they're smart. They know what they're doing. They've been around the block. They've been in business, and particularly the dean, he knows sales. From my little bit of interaction, you know him better than I do, but I think anyone that knows the dean and knows his background, he knows a lot more than he comes across. Is the
Right.
summary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think,
The dean was. That's how I met him. Was before he came to Like Trucking. He was working at Bellaflor, and him and another friend of mine um, helped me with some negotiating tactics. So that's how I know Dean. Now
and
he
so
doesn't
what
like
happened?
it anymore, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But
So
go ahead.
basically, the summary was, as Sage was doing his thing, which is perfectly, it's his channel. I mean, kudos to Sage, what he's done with his channel. He's growing it nicely. He's doing some great stuff. He's kind of in his own little niche, but he's really good. He's over 17,000 subs. So so congrats to Sage on that. So when Sandman came in, well, I thought I would try to join in the call, and Sage had his phone number on the screen, and I was trying to call into that number, and it wasn't working. And I thought, oh, maybe it's because maybe his phone system only allows one caller at a time. So I tried to text Sage to say, hey, drop the link, and I'll come in and join the conversation. And so that wasn't working. I didn't get a response or see that. So I figured, well, I had Sandman's number, so I thought I would just call Sandman saying, hey, why don't you join me in, because I couldn't get in, through the other traditional ways weren't working there. So that's the only thing there. And then and Sage, to basically clarify, this is just from my side, because again, I discovered with the merge call, and there's nothing that Cascade did wrong or nothing that Sage did wrong. But I found that because I had the YouTube live feed muted, and there was a couple times when we were chatting that, Eric, he muted us, so I lost some of the conversation a little bit from time to time. Some of the questions I didn't actually hear, or some of the comments, because we got muted. And but basically, the first most important thing that Sage was talking about was he wanted to despise basically what the dean, and I didn't know that Sage, his history or not, but he actually, said he knows the dean outside of, he's known and talked with the dean before, which I didn't know. So I thought, I just kind of went on there with the idea of, I didn't know the background with them, but I just thought, hey, it's not really fair that, why not give a little support to the dean, basically just as a different perspective for Eric. That's all. I wasn't trying to be a basher or go against him or anything. And in Eric's number one point, because that was the biggest, I think that's what got Eric frustrated, was Sandman and I would sometimes we were straying, we were getting off. It wasn't intentional, but it was just tying into the whole thing. But if you went back to it, the first question, and Eric is right, is there fuel surcharge on the spot market? And Eric is right, the answer, and Steve, and we all agree, no, right? For the most part. There are maybe a few brokers that you work with, maybe it's a regular lane, or maybe they're on a contract where they're saying, hey, we're paying X dollars and plus a fuel surcharge, because maybe they have 25 loads and this is what they've done, right? Maybe something to that effect. And so the point I wanted to say is I agree. Yes, Sage, there was no fuel surcharge. However, and then I didn't get a chance to explain it, but the 2 points I wanted to say, because we got into a whole thing around access rules, which we can address afterwards, but the two things I wanted to say is, I'm a broker, but I believe and I wish that the marketplace actually had a fuel surcharge. And the reason for that is cheap lanes, like everyone talks about. You go to Florida, you need your money going in because you're going to get a buck a mile out. So my theory would be that would help those outbound freight lanes. If we were in a position where there was $1 a mile, where brokers knew and everyone shippers know, you're going to do $1 a mile plus the 80 cents fuel surcharge. That would help the marketplace in my mind. It would protect, so that when there's cheap lanes that a broker's trying to flog off, or a shipper, because the reality is that, we all know that sometimes we know what a lane should pay, but shippers will say, well, we're not paying that much right now. That's just the reality of the world. But I was trying to say, and I don't think it came across clearly, but that I as a broker wish we had a fuel surcharge process, so that it would at least protect the carriers from at least any fluctuations, high or low. And the second point that I wanted to bring up that we got distracted. When I first started in the world of transportation and brokering, my understanding of the fuel surcharge, I mean, I brought it up a little bit on there that, it started back in 1973, but the point was this. When, Steve, if you came into the marketplace and bought a truck, even if you're going to go in the spot market, or you're going to go and work as a lease company, or you're going to be on a contract for hauling bread, 53, it's your truck, but you're hauling bread between grocery channels or something, whatever it is you're doing, you're buying a truck, you're coming in the marketplace, and you're sitting down with a bank and they're saying, well, what's your business plan? How much is it going to cost? Well, my understanding with fuel surcharge was this. Everyone at that time coming in was going to assume, I'm going to be paying at least $1.21 fuel. So therefore, your base business, that you could do your math, how big your tanks are at $1.21, it's a built-in cost. Now, when the fuel goes above that $1.21, the fuel surcharge program would kick in, right? That was the idea back when I was learned and shown, but that was kind of the basis, that it was a tool. And I think that fuel surcharge concept is a tool to help new brokers establish a baseline. Like if you're going to enter the market for the first time in 2022, you're not going to base your business, you're not going to base fuel at $1 a gallon, right? Well, no, that's unrealistic. So if you were to say, well, okay, because when you're buying, you got your truck costs, and then you're going to say, well, what's all my costs? You got to list, you're going to have a whole shopping list of costs that does not matter if you're spot market, contract, lease, it's all the same, but you're going to have a cost associated to that. So I was trying to say that that's where a fuel surcharge could be beneficial. But the whole point was, yes, in this specifically to Dean's concept around this, because I believe, and again, I don't want to put words because it's the Dean that said it, but when Eric was playing the video back, Dean was saying, let's say there was a load for $1,000, and Dean felt that the load should pay $2,000. He felt that most carriers are only trying to get $200 extra on that load, not $800 or $1,000 more. So he's saying that all we're negotiating in the marketplace is the fuel surcharge, which is, he used the math. He said if it was 300 miles at 80 cents a mile, that's $240. So if you only get $200 more on a load, or $250 or $300 more, all you're gaining is the fuel surcharge, which he thinks that should be. But we both know it's not there. And
I remember that part. Yeah, I got up to the point, right? I guess it was right before you came in on that video. And, the thing about Ascend is I can see what shippers are paying brokers, or what, because the brokers have a baseline as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we have our data averages. Well, Ascend gives you the broker averages.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what, and Sage asked me the question, Rob, if you have a load posted for 1,000, hey, there's the guy of the hour.
I am live, just so you know. You're welcome to kick me out if you want, but I'm also streaming.
Oh, okay.
You're streaming me, streaming you. Fair use.
Hey, that's double. It's like Tim Hortons double.
Yeah. So here's the problem I have. And this was the point I was trying to get across. And here's where the frustration lies. Trucking seems to have a point of insanity. And the insanity is that the same thing is done over and over and over and over again, and there's no changes. And everybody expects there to be a change. Okay. So in regards to trucking, there is a shift with this new Supreme Court stuff that has happened and broker stuff. I see a shift coming in regards to what brokers can and can't do, what they're legally allowed to do, that they cannot take possession of the freight. I posted it on my community page. There is now nuclear verdicts on the side of the brokerages, not just the side of the truckers, but the side of the brokerages. So when it comes to putting, like I listened before I jumped on there, when it comes to a fuel surcharge so that to protect carriers, well, it's based on supply and demand. There's not a lot of freight in Florida, so there's not good rates in Florida. So we can't just tweak supply and demand and break the laws of economy, of economics, to basically say, hey, since you're a bad business person, we're going to go ahead and completely change the laws of economics to help you do better. Okay, that's not going to happen. So what I would like to see, and people are going to get pissed off, but welcome to business. And I just did an interview with somebody. She's an economic. I cut a clip, and I want everyone to watch that 3-minute clip. Okay, but understand that you are in business. You are entering business. No one here is your friend. Okay, customers They're not my friends. They're business. There's no personal. It's business. I mean, none of us are ending up with any type of animal heads in our beds, but hey, Godfather, it's not personal. It's business. But understand that when the carriers that I now work with, or I'm going to be working with, and I've worked with in a long periods of time, they're not panhandlers. They don't call me up and say, hey, can I get more? Can I get more? Can I get more? I say, here's my load. Here's where it's going. Call me back. They then call me back. They know their numbers. This is why I deal with as much professional business people as possible, because it's not my job to give you your numbers. They give me they know their numbers. They check the lanes. They know their profit margin. They know how much they want to make. Do they want a 50% markup? Do they want a 100% markup? What profit margin do they want? Then they call me back and they say, here's my number. Like hauling cash hauled a load for me. I got a load going from here to here to here. He's like, I'll call you right back. I'm like, all right. He called me back. He gave me a number. The point of it in regards to what I'm seeing more and more problems is when I drove truck, that's how I handled my business. I knew my numbers. If you don't know your numbers, get out of trucking. You're hurting everybody else and you're wasting your time. And if you want me to tiptoe around this, I'm not tiptoeing anymore. I'm not tiptoeing anymore. Because when I go to a shipper, do you think a shipper doesn't care about which truck I'm using? They don't care how much my mortgage is. They want their numbers. Give me how much this is going to cost. I hire you to give me that. So when the dean did that video and he says, hey, we need this and we need that, it's like, what is your profit margin? What are your numbers? What business goes out and just says, hey, how much do you have in that? I want more. I want more. Stop panhandling. Stop panhandling. Know your numbers and give a quote for and if you get picked, you're picked. Because does that not happen on our end, Rob?
Well, it does. I'll go back to the minute, but I was going to say the one problem, though, Sage, is that we have a marketplace that now has instituted and become a norm with click and goes, whereby carriers often do not have the opportunity to negotiate on that board. It's you accept that if they put a rate for $700, if you like it, you take it. If you don't, sometimes they will put the button that says bid, so you can put a number in there, but more often than not, you can't. So that concept, and when often, even if you know your number, often carriers can call a broker and they're saying, we're only paying, you want $1,500. The broker says, we're only paying 1,000. Well, can you do 11? No, we're only paying 1,000.
That's got to stop. That's going to stop. I'm telling you.
Hang on. Yeah, exactly. But
nuclear verdicts, it's just like you were saying about me signing that piece of paper in regards to tarping. I cannot make a financial decision for a shipper without them okaying it. Do you agree?
To a degree, yes.
Okay.
But so let me caveat though. That was one of the key points I think that where we got lost. You're in a specialized niche market where you deal with.
Go ahead.
No, but hang on. Let me explain, please. You deal with your carriers. Like if some carrier called you up and says, Sage, I run dry vans from Chicago to California. Are you going to entertain even how much time are you going to spend on the call with a guy like that?
I don't work with dry vans.
Exactly. So my point is this. Let me get to my point.
Mm-hmm.
When a carrier calls you up and says, I run dry vans from Chicago to California or whatever.
Okay.
If it's dry van freight, you're just going to say, hey, buddy, I appreciate good job. Hey, great stuff. But unfortunately, I'm a heavy haul broker. That's all I do.
Or open deck. I do legal open deck, but I don't do.
Right. But you just say, thanks for your time. Unfortunately, I'm not the broker for you. Go, there's lots of other people. So where I'm going with this, unlike yourself, a lot of my day, when you work under a broker with 50, 60 agents, I post loads.
Yep.
I do. I'm not saying, remember you and I have discussed, I don't post all my loads, but I do post loads. And if I get calls, I make an honest, hard effort. I call all those. If I cover the load, I call the other people back. And I might explain to them, because sometimes I may have someone comes in, they're willing to do it for the price I have, or we've agreed to a price. I look, they're not in my system yet. I get another carrier that's in my system where I can quickly dispatch them. I've worked with them before. So sometimes I will use that because of that relationship, and I'll give it to that carrier. I'll call the other one back saying, hey, you know what? This was kind of a thing that, you weren't set up yet. I would have given you the load. Looks like you have a good track record, but you're just not in our system. Well, can we get set up? So
Sure.
I do that because guess what? I do that for the reason that if a carrier calls me and they're not set up, I figure this way, next time they call me or they call any other agent within our network, they're now set up. So we're setting up a carrier without any loads assigned to them. And remember, and that carrier, I have all kinds of carriers that have all kinds of different pricing. So yes, we have different carriers with different pricing. That I have some that will charge me $75, $100 for a full tarp. I got some that charge me $200. I got some carriers that charge me $50 detention fees. I got some carriers that charge me $185 a fee.
Okay.
So what I do when I get a call from a customer, whether it's saying, Rob, we need a load covered now, like in the next 2 hours, or if it's a future quote for 2 weeks from now, because they're bidding on a project, I look at the lane that they're servicing, that where they want the freight to go. Sometimes I have and in fact, when I was on the call with you and Sandman, I was booking a load. Why? Because I booked it with a regular carrier. I paid them. I paid them a price plus 20. I pay them a fee plus a 20% fuel surcharge on that lane, and I charge the 20% fuel surcharge to my customer. So the point is, I have carriers with all kinds of different scenarios, and we have notes in our system that will say, hey, when you work with this carrier, I have one particular carrier in mind I'm thinking of where it says, always, always specify, confirm the detention charge rate and any agreements on that, because this carrier is notorious where they'll just send an invoice and add detention charges without calling the broker. So the point is, yes, we will do this because we have such a vast network. When you work with a vast network, you're always adding carriers, because when you're a new broker, that's your catch-22.
No, I understand, but what the problem is that, okay, so the carrier comes to you and says, we charge $200 for TARP.
That's right.
You will sign that.
Yes, because I'll tell you why.
Hang on. I want to make sure, because now the next carrier comes to you and says, I charge $500 for TARP. You will sign that?
Not always. Sometimes we will say,
Why
not?
What
we'll do is we'll say that seems higher than the market average. Sometimes we'll say, well, that's our price, so forth, so forth.
So now you are setting the market average. You are now setting the market average for carriers.
No.
Why wouldn't you? Wait a minute. So you would see, here's my problem.
But shippers are doing that.
Shippers can do that. It's their money. It's their
shippers. But here's what the summary is. This stage.
Point.
This is your first point.
But this was the point. This was the point I was trying to tell you. You cannot take possession of the freight in this country. You can't do it. It checked my community board. Yes, I've seen it. It is law. It is base. It's in there under court. Went to the Supreme Court. You cannot set the price for the tarping of the freight in which you don't take possession of. So my point was, I have to at that point say, hey, shipper, this carrier wants to charge $500 for tarping. What do you want me to do? And if they say, oh, we're not paying $500 for tarping, we have a set, we've consistently paid $250, I'm going to have to say, go back to that carrier, because I'm a middleman only. Go back to that carrier and say, they've already have a set precedence of $250. If that won't work for you, I'm going to have to let you go on. I can't have you do the load, because I charge on the lane to offset the price. I can't. The problem is customers will be like, hey, why are you charging me more money on this lane now? Well, because I'm trying to offset the price for TARP, but you won't pay the TARP. I can't.
Let's say you had 3 carriers drop on that load.
Doesn't matter. It's not my decision.
No, but when you went back to the customer and they said, Sage, do you have a truck? Yeah, I got a guy assigned. Then
yes.
You email in the morning saying, oh man, that carrier dropped on me. I'm working on another. You email them, I got another truck.
Yes.
And so forth. Now it's on to your third, fourth. And meanwhile, as you and I both know, when you email a shipper that, hey, my driver, the carrier called that their driver's sick or whatever the case is, or they're detained at another shipper, they're not going to make it on time.
Are they dropping for the TARP charges, or are they just dropping?
No, let's just say that you had the load book. Doesn't matter about forget the TARP charge. A customer says you got a load that you need to go from point A to point B. You gave them a rate. Your customer agreed to the rate. You either found one of your carriers within your network, or you posted on the load board. Doesn't matter, but you found a carrier. This carrier, you have a signed confirmation. Everything else, you booked it on a Thursday or Wednesday. All of a sudden, Thursday morning, you email the broker, the carrier, saying, hey, is your driver on track for that 11 o'clock pickup? well, actually, no, he's still at the shipper. They're at this crane offload. It's a flatbed load, and he's still there. He's going to be. It looks like he's going to be there for 3-4 hours.
Sure.
He's not going to make it by 11. And you're like, well, if you're not going to make it by 11, my customer's not going to wait for you. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to I have to take that load back from you. So meanwhile, you email saying, hey, look, this is what's happened. The carrier assigned is at a crane unload that they're not going to make it by 11. I am working to get a recovery truck. Sometimes customers will say, okay, no problem. And what they will do is if they have 2 or 3 brokers in their network, sometimes some shippers will just wait for you to fix it. Sometimes, depending on the urgency of the load, they will rebroadcast that load to their other partners.
Yes.
So they'll say, first come, first serve, who can find it. Meanwhile, the other brokers aren't finding a truck. You come up with another one. That one bounces on you. Now you're onto the third one. So now you email them saying, look, I got a third carrier here that's 50 miles away that can do it. Yep. However, the one kicker with this carrier, though, their tarp fee, you need this low tarp. They're charging, the other carriers were fine with your $250 rate, no problem. This carrier is charging actually $400.
Correct.
I said, well, we can't pay $400.
Okay.
Sometimes, but however, they might just say, you know what, Eric, we've had 3 trucks bounce on this. My customer needs it by, this carrier can make the timelines.
Correct.
See if they can do $350 and you can book it.
Correct.
So you go back and you get, so that's, I'm saying, yes, you may have some contracts, but there's always leeway.
At that point, I've done my job. My job is not to make the decision and sign a contract for tarp charges. That's not my job. I cannot sign a contract telling that the customer will pay $500 for tarping when they won't. That's not my job.
Okay, but what if
I have to go to the customer and say, this is what this carrier wants. Do you agree to this? And if they say no, then I've done my job. Now it's on them. I've put the ball in their court. I found a truck. The truck wants this. Now it's their job to make that decision because it's their freight. I did not assume a supervisory role. I was the middleman.
That's all I'm saying is that the point is this. Let me ask you this: when you have carriers sign on to you to take a load, and they say they're a new carrier to you, and they say, okay, Eric, we'll do it for the rate that you're telling us. However, we normally don't do it for this, but we want to work with you, so we're going to do it.
That's not happening.
You're saying, but where does the balance fit here? Because okay, let me take one step back.
Not my rate. It's not my rate. It's their rate.
But what we're saying is I think we're getting diluted in the sense, like, let me just take a step back. We talked about Florida and rates.
What you're actually doing is overstepping your bounds as a freight broker, to be completely honest.
But hang on though, but that's what shippers want from us. Many shippers don't understand this concept, but what shippers want, why do we as brokers go to shippers, is because we're selling that instead of the shipper having to spend hours of their day calling and emailing 15 or 20 different carriers, maintaining the carrier's insurances, checking their safety ratings, checking their reliability, and managing all these pieces. They can call you, they can call me or any other broker. They have 1 or 2 brokers in their back pocket that gives them 10,000 trucks or more. And so that's why they rely on the brokers to do all this work. So sometimes, I think
the problem is that you're not. This isn't my rules. This is what you're.
I understand that, but so that's why I mentioned to you. Sure. I don't know if you saw my comments after we got off the call. I think maybe you need to either you just do it, or maybe through your connections you have a way to reach someone that from the FMCSA, someone or even from the TIA that can come onto your show and show and explain clearly.
I've already done it. I've already posted case law.
You got the case law, but what I'm saying is take it to the next level. Where I'm saying is that you take it to the next level where you go on your show and do a specific show that clearly let's walk it through slowly through the process. I'm a broker. I come on the marketplace. You call a shipper.
It is specifically, it's written, it's up for interpretation.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is where the confusion comes in is I think most brokers don't have the insight that you have or I have. And I'm trying to say is that what you're explaining is changing significantly what negotiation power a broker has in the marketplace. In regards to
negotiation, your job as a freight broker is to technically pre-qualify carriers and find adequate transportation needs for your customer. It might not even be a truck. It could be the rail. You see what I'm saying? It's my job.
Hang on now. Let me ask you about rail. Rail.
Okay, I go to the rail. The rail gives me a price.
Right. Now, let's say your customer, you signed a contract with your customer that pays detention at $40 an hour for all trucks. You signed a contract that all the services you provide is $40 detention.
Correct.
But I know, and we both know that Schneider Intermodal, and I've got 5 other
A lot more.
Intermodal, they charge a whole lot more.
Correct.
So
But
how do you sign a contract at 40? So what do you do? Are you eating that?
No, I go to my customer and I explain, look, this is not the contract that we signed was for if you want that, the contract that we signed, this does not fall into the category. They want more for detention. You need to make a decision on if you're going to pay that or not. If you are, I need you to put it in an email to me in writing stating that you approve the additional charge. I can't make that decision.
So back to your point, when you said, when I sign, if I have carriers that want to get paid more, let's say I put in my broker agreement form to the carrier where we lay out our detention charges based on our customers. I've had carriers that will say, well, look, we agree to your terms. However, there's a couple, the rates here we want changed. And that goes through a process there. And if we come to an agreement on that, what I'm saying is that like I said, there's 2 scenarios. If a customer calls me today looking for a quote for a live load, we need it loaded this afternoon.
Sure.
I'm going to quote them saying, yep, I got a truck that's going to do this. Just FYI, their detention, they give me 2 hours of this one. I have some carriers that actually give 1 hour, but let's just say I have this carrier that's 2 hours load and unload time, but just be aware that their detention time is $150 an hour.
Okay.
Okay, that's for this truck. And if they agree to it, say, well, look, we got to get this moved, so go ahead, Rob, move that truck. Now, the second scenario, if they call me saying, Rob, we're bidding on his job, it closes at 4 o'clock today, we need rates for 10 trucks, 10 flatbeds in this lane, point A to point B. Okay. And it's going to go, like you're picking up in a major city, say Chicago, but it's going to North Dakota down a trunk road where it's going to be crane offloaded. Okay, so there's a little bit of off-road and so forth, because as soon as you hear off-road, that I always explain to shippers, when you start out with freight, you say I got freight. So if you think of a funnel, you're starting at the top. As soon as you say I got freight, great. There's thousands of carriers. Now you put one condition on it, all of a sudden that funnel gets lower. You put more conditions, the funnel of available trucks declines each time you have something. So now, when I quote that customer on that job for those 10 trucks, I think of the carriers that are qualified and suitable for it. I'll look at my network first. And if I see them and I say, hey, in the next month, are you guys going to have capacity in this lane? If they're saying, yeah, we will. And sometimes if they say, Rob, I know I work with you, but we're currently doing a project that we're going to be tied up. I won't have nothing for 3 months. Okay, now I have to change, because I'm not going to quote based off of those carriers' rates, because I can't rely on them. I want reliability. So now if I'm having to, whatever I do to come up with a rate to the customer for this project, say it's $2,000 a truck, I'm going to find out if the carriers say, well, it's $2,000, but I'm going to charge this. I have these extra conditions, and I'm seeing that each carrier has some slight differences. Then what I do is I put on the quote, I said, here's the price, and I put the conditions. I say, loading 2 hours. For the unload, it's billed as soon as the truck hits the ground. It's billed by the hour, and it ranges based on carriers, the carrier booked between, say, $75 and $150 an hour. I will give the range, and then same thing with the tarp fee. I say, if there's tarping, the tarp fee will be between $100 to $300 depending on the carrier, and then I put the caveat. I will specify at the time of booking, before the truck arrives, what that cost is going to be, so they know. So if they said, okay, Rob, this 20 load project is a go, and they say, what's the first truck? I say, great, I got truck number 1 booked for picking up on Monday at 8 o'clock. That truck is the one that's going to give us 2 hours and 2 hours unload, and their wait time is $100 an hour. Their tarping fee is $250. Are you okay with that? Yes.
Right, and that's not what you said. What you said is they already send the rate confirmation sheet, and with the rate confirmation sheet, then they send me their accessorial.
No. I've never. No. Don't. Sorry. I didn't mean it that. What I'm saying is that when if I came across that way, that was not the intent. I agree with you that if a carrier tries to pull that to me after the fact,
they send my packet, they send the rate confirmation sheet, and then they send me accessorial charges with this. And I said, no, I'm not signing that.
Now, hang on, though. If they give it to me before we've even booked loads and they send me an accessorial sheet, I'm going to look at it and say, well, let me look at this carrier. How much do I need them? Because I have some carriers. I have a carrier that there's only 3 carriers I can use in a certain locations. They have no choice. right? I have no choice but to tell the customer, if you want me to service this lane, I have to pay this much, right? That's the reality. And at first they might be hesitant, but then they realize, oh, Rob was right, because all the other carriers are charging the same amount. They think it's outrageous, but it's because certain facilities I service have selected carriers that are allowed to go in. Not every carrier can go in there.
Right, but
So,
ultimately, if a shipper says we pay $150 for tarp, it is what it is. Correct?
no, because I'll be honest. I have shippers that give me a sheet to sign like that, and I'll tell you what, I have zero. I have yet to come across I have many shippers that lay out their own fuel surcharge programs. I have shippers that lay out charges they pay, just like you said, so much. And guess what? I send those to my office. My office changes a bunch of stuff. I go back to the shipper. I've got 5 of those kind of deals that have been hanging in limbo. So the summary is, I haven't been able to work with those kind of shippers that lay out all those charges.
All right, so it is what it is. You don't work with them, but somebody does.
Somebody does.
Okay, so when it comes down to it, the shipper's going to set that price. You don't have to work.
But isn't it as far as fair use, like this whole deal about the broker? At the same token, we can't dictate pricing, but yet shouldn't like we always hear about? So that's where the fine line lies here.
And because it's their freight.
Okay, but what about a carrier? Why is it then okay if a carrier
because it's his business also. We are the only 2 people that can dictate pricing are the people in possession of the freights. Well, let's say 3 technically, if you want to consider. Let's say customer and carrier, because it could be shipper, receiver. Those are the people that can technically dictate those terms. They are in possession of the freight. I cannot, just like they said, I can't fine a carrier for being late. I can't fine a carrier for being late. It's not my freight. That's why C.H. Robinson got in trouble. They tried to fine a carrier that was for being late on something that was not theirs. I do have a shipper that charges reverse detention now. They gave me a letter where they say if the driver's after 2 hours, we charge our time back because the drivers want to get paid, so they want reverse detention. That is a pass through from the shipper. You can pass that through, but that is not you. That there are
no. But let's say you as a broker says you were late by 3 hours.
Yeah,
I'm going to give my customer a credit of $100.
You can't give it. You can, but you can't deduct it from them. You can give the credit all you want, but you can't deduct it from the carrier.
But what if the customer told you before you started, Sage or Rob, these 10-load project, when the drivers are more than 2 hours late, it's $100 deduction, automatic.
That is something that you would have.
And if you put that on the load confirmation to the carrier, is that not legal?
That is legal because you now have that confirmation from the shipper. But you can't give a credit unless you can show a paper trail showing that is a legitimate deduction from the shipper. You can't do that. You can't make this stuff up to go. It is.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
But there are brokers that are doing that. That there's no paper trail. They are legitimately just saying, well, if you don't give me my bill of lading in 24 hours, I'm going to charge you $25.
We all know, and I bet you everyone on the chat here will know that there are warehouses out there that have signages. When you are late, right? When you are late for an appointment, they charge fees. The driver has to pay a fee upon arrival.
There's a paper trail. From people but you can't make a paper trail when you're not in possession of the freight. Brokers are listen, drivers want to be pissing me all I want. What I'm telling you is there are freight brokers in this industry that are overstepping their bounds. And if something were to happen and you were in a wreck, they are now included in the multi-million billion-dollar lawsuit because they are become an agent. I can't remember what the term is. It was on there, but they are becoming a participating agent in the load.
You're 100% right. And most brokers don't know that. That let's say you had like you and I both have an open deck load. You called and the dispatch gave you the driver's phone number and you called that driver and you said, hey, John, how's it going? Yep, loaded up. I'm just pulling out of the yard. And he's driving on a Bluetooth headset, but you're on the phone with him and he gets in an accident.
Correct.
That insurance company, if they saw the call records and they dived into it and figured out that the phone number that he was on was with the broker, that said broker is possibly liable for the insurance for that insurance claim.
If you, again, this is stuff that technically drivers need to know about this stuff, and this is where the frustration part lies, is that it is not my job to take possession of the freight. It is not my job to tell you how much money you need to make. Now
hang on though, but we do have this though, Serge, because let's take this scenario.
Hang on. There are analytics in the industry, and there is a way where I can say, well, the analytics are saying this, but that's not me setting the price. That is me saying, customer, the analytics state this.
No, not necessarily, because I'll tell you why. There's two ways that when the shipper asks for a rate, two things happen. One, you either have to call 3 or 4 brokers and find out what brokers are charging for that lane, or carriers are charging for that lane. Yep. That's one. So you write down the name, and I will do that from time to time, because what I do in respect is if I call a carrier, hey, I'm working on this project or this quote, how much are you looking at right now? What's the current price? I haven't done it in a few months. And they know me, they'll give me the price. And then guess what? When that load comes about, I call them first. I don't post it. I said, hey, remember last week I called you about it? And I said, do you have an available truck? If they say, oh, sorry, Rob, we're booked, at least they know I gave them the full respect. I didn't post it on them or not.
Right.
Secondly, there's enough brokers out there. There's a lot of new brokers. That's what they do. That's their bane of their business. They call people, get a rate, pass on the pricing to the customer. Now, on the flip side of that, there's a lot of brokers that have good knowledge where you might have a lane that you just know, hey, Atlanta, Georgia to Houston, Texas for a flatbed, you know the price inside out. You don't have to call 5 carriers. You just know the price. If you know you can book a truck for $1,500 or $2,000 in a lane.
How do you know that? How do you know that price? Because you've used carriers before that have given you that price. That's called analytics. You didn't. You see what I'm saying? So through experience and knowledge and time, you've gained the ability to know in your head or on a piece of paper. You've been able to know the analytics of that lane.
But we are dictating the price, because now when we go to the shipper, give a rate. When the shipper receives 4 different rates from 4 different brokers,
correct,
and one is $2,000 all the way up to $5,000.
Correct.
What do a lot of shippers do in the world? They think, well, hey, we'll give it a shot. We'll try the $2,000. We're not in a rush. Let's go with the $2,000 guy. We'll save money and see what he does. Then what happens 9 times out of 10? They'll go to the next guy, and that they still can't get a truck. It's because those are the brokers that are throwing darts in the dartboard.
Correct.
Those are the ones that are just taking some number, random number. They look at something. They don't even look at the actual. They see a DAT 15-day average, but they actually don't look at the lane. They don't look at any of the realities. They don't look at all those things, and they realize that they underbid.
They don't have enough time to properly do their job, to properly learn their job. They have not had enough time to properly have the analytics and the knowledge to do their job. Right? They're making up numbers. Now, if I have a couple options, either I go to a specific carrier and say, how much for you to haul this load? It's ready at 2:00. Well, I'm just making stuff up. And they say $3,000. I have no idea. Okay, I'll call you right back. And then I call the customer. I say, I have a truck that can be there $3,000. And then we say, okay, let's make it happen. Then the truck goes and picks it up. That's option A they can do. Or option B, they can learn to fail. And learning to fail is, I posted it for $2,000. I didn't get a truck. I screwed that one up. I guess I got to learn to do my job better. I have to learn the analytics better. This is a math game.
Exactly.
Right?
And so you're saying, so let me ask you this then. So is there a legal issue with the following? You bid on a job, let's say it's a flatbed load, or it could be like 20 loads of water, right? Mm-hmm. That's what, Coyotes and C.H. Robinsons do. They go to Procter & Gamble in these big warehouses and they bid on 20 loads, right? A PO for 20 loads going to some new product getting distributed to all the Walmarts, right?
Okay.
So they go out there and they say, okay, we'll do it for $2,500. And the shipper comes back and says, well, we need it to be at $2,000. Well, how about this? We'll do them for $2,200 for you. So they haven't talked to any carriers. They've just agreed saying that we are confident that our pool of carriers will pull these 20 loads for us somewhere under $2,200 so we can make some profit off of that. Brokers are negotiating with shippers just as much as the other way around, right? So shippers will come to the brokers saying, look, hey, I got some other lower rates from other brokers, but I'd rather work with you because you're more reliable. They use other brokers, but they said these guys are, they've always had trucks falling off. When I work with you, you don't have as many trucks falling off. So I'd rather work with you. So what can you do to help me out with the rate? And you say, well, that $1,800 is unrealistic. That's not realistic for this lane. But I bid you, say the cheap broker went 1,800, you bid 2,700, and they're like, well, we can't do 27. Okay.
Where did you get your number from? You got your number through your experience and analytics of moving previous loads. That is what a broker does. You got your numbers through your experience and analytics of moving previous loads.
Now, what happens now? Okay, so say you do get these 20 loads at 2,200.
Okay.
We all know the broker game is we hope to move all the loads at 1,700. But we know the reality is unless you booked it with one truck saying, you got 10 trucks, I'll give you 10 of these loads at 1,700, and they committed to it, boom, you're happy. But let's say you only get, you're booking each one separately with one truck, two trucks, and there's all kinds of different carriers doing it. What's going to happen? Well, you're going to have every carrier is going to come in saying, well, I can't do it for 1,700. I need 2,000 or 2,100. You're going to say, well, the best I can do is 1,900. You're negotiating your profit, essentially. You have the price with the customer. The customer doesn't care if you make money or not. Right? So that's where is the gray area and how much, so when, let's say shippers and carriers revealed certain broker overcharged a load, like, not overcharged, but made thousands of dollars off of each load, right? They say they found out these 20 loads that the broker actually profited $1,000 each, and the shipper felt that was unfair. They didn't know this.
Okay.
So is that illegal for the broker to make $1,000 a load?
No. Why would it be illegal?
Right. So,
okay.
So what I'm saying is that's how you can cheat. If I had 20 flatbed loads to move that were tarped.
Correct.
Let's say I have a carrier. One carrier says, "Yep, I'm paying. You're charging your customer $2,500, including tarp. That's an all-in price. You committed for 20
Correct.
loads of shingles to get moved from their warehouse to these. They have 20 loads to move to a distribution warehouse. So 20 yard to yard, 20 loads tarped, and you're paying $2,500.
Yeah.
So if a carrier says, and you say, well, I'm paying $2,100 including tarp. But let's say that next carrier says, or I'll do it for $1,800. One carrier says, yeah, $1,800 is no problem. The next carrier says, well, I need $2,000 because I got to pay my driver $150 tarp fee. And you agree to that $2,000. You're paying extra on the tarp, but you're paying him $2,000 including tarp. So how that's broken out is irrelevant, isn't it?
That's what my point was. Well, that's what my whole point was. With the fuel surcharge and the tarp, it was a flat rate. It doesn't matter how you break this up. That was my whole argument on the last one. Just like this fuel surcharge. There is no fuel surcharge. It's a flat rate. I don't care how you break it up. I don't care.
I came on to say, I agree. Yes, you're right. Does the spot market have fuel surcharges? 99%, no. There's a small percentage of a few brokers that will say, hey, I'm paying this, and there's a fuel surcharge of this built into the price, or whatever the case is. There's a few oddities that happen.
Correct.
But for the most part, everyone on a day-to-day, majority of shippers that are on the spot market, right, they don't care about the details. They just want their freight moved for a flat freight. Right?
What is spot rate?
I came on to say...
Hang on. What is a spot rate to you? Maybe this is where the problem lies. If I'm a customer, like, what is a spot rate? I need a spot.
A spot rate means what is the current available rate based on supply of available trucks in that lane at that given moment in time.
Okay. So at that point, how do you get your spot price?
Well, depends on who it is. If I look at it, I will sometimes go to my network carriers.
And you call.
I know.
And you call.
Or else, no, I'll be honest. My very first tip that I use, because I have the tools, I actually go to our internal TMS. We have a lane IQ tool, and I look up how many, has anyone moved, has any other agents moved a load in that lane in the last month? Because if they have, I look at it this way, as a broker with multiple agents,
yeah,
I call the carriers that we work with this way. If I call up and say, hey, XYZ ABC Trucking Company, you pulled a load last week? Oh, yeah, we pulled for so-and-so. Yeah, I got a load in this similar lane that's the next city over 50 miles away or something like that. Do you have availability?
Bingo. And he gives you a price.
Exactly.
Okay. So a spot rate is 9 times out of 10. You can use your analytics, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to a truck and you're saying how much for you to haul this load. That's a spot rate. You're going.
We're also saying, well, that seems a bit high. I was hoping to be at, even though I haven't negotiated with the customer. But if I know the customer,
You're right to say it's a bit high.
right? Because if you know your customer based on previous bidding history,
but it's not your right to say it's a bit high. Who are you? No, it's not. Who are you?
What if 4 other carriers give me cheaper pricing?
Hang on. That's still not. You're not your job to tell me my price. Who the heck do you think you are?
You're saying as a carrier or as the broker?
Carrier. You called me. I didn't call you. You want to call me and ask me my price, and then the first thing out of your mouth is, that seems high? Click. Call someone else. I don't do that. I take whatever price that is, and I say, thank you, let me give you a ring back, or I'll call somebody else and see what their price is. Thank you, I'll give you a call back, and I'll go to the customer, and I'll tell them, this truck is here, this truck is here, this truck is here. As a broker, you don't have the right to tell somebody that their listen, plumber comes into my house, and
we know the story, yeah.
All right, I'm not going to say, oh man, your price is too. I'm just going to say thank you, and if it's too high to me, it's too high to you. I might pay that dude's price. I might be a better salesman than you. I might be able to get his price. He might be worth his price. But the problem that I have with freight is that exact thing that freight brokers do. Your price is too high. Screw you. Find another carrier.
That's why a lot of brokers have struggles is this. When a shipper asks for a rate, I see it. Often a lot of brokers will reply back, $1,500. Nothing else included, no notes, no conditions, just $1,500. Then the shipper takes that price, and then the broker says, oh, I can't get a truck. So then they call me saying, Rob, do you have that? Your price was higher, but the other people, my other provider, they use the term, the other provider can't get a truck at that price. So the point was this, is that if a broker if the shipper is seeing different price points, they're trying to come to us in the marketplace and dictating what the pricing is.
But it's a spot market price. They're not looking for a contracted price. They're looking for, look, man, I need to move this load right now.
Exactly.
Go out Friday. So just get me a price. But the problem is that here's my problem with this. And this is my problem with Rob, or not Rob. Let's use Dean because you're Rob. Here's my problem with the Dean. Listen, I look at it like this. Right now, drivers and carriers are all taught the same thing. They have taught to look at the freight broker's price, take his price, and tack on a couple $100, and then you take it. They don't even know their numbers. Stop it. Stop panhandling for freight. If you're a carrier, know your numbers. Know what profit margin you want on yours. If your numbers are, let's use simple numbers. If your numbers are $1.50 for me to my break even, and I want 100% markup, that means I want $3 a mile. Because this is what happens in business. This is how business works. Now, if I could be like, well, this is putting me in a good area, and I see that another load, I might not want 100% profit markup on this one. I can do this one for a 50% profit markup. But that's the carrier's decision to make, not the broker's. So if I ask you for, hey, how much to go from here to here, you should hang up and be like, will you hold it for 5 minutes? Sure, give me a call back. He calls me back, and he says, my price is, I'm going to use simple numbers, is $3,000. Who the hell am I to say, that seems kind of high?
Well, let me ask you this now.
Thank you. Let me see what I can do.
Right. That's what you do. Now, however, I've seen it happen where I'll say, look, hey, I'm calling you because I got this lane. I've worked with you before. Where are you at with the price? And they say, I'm at $2,900. You say, you know what? Hey, Roy or Larry or John or whoever in dispatch, we've worked together. I'll tell you what, my shippers come to me that they've had lower pricing, but they struggle with the truck. Mm-hmm. But I know that you're a better carrier than all these other ones. Could we do something on the rate here? Because this is the situation, and they know you, if you have a relationship with them because you called them, right? If brokers are calling you because of a posted load, then you have, I believe at that point, let's say you had the load posted and you pick up the phone and it says, hey, I'm calling about your load posted from point A to point B, you would then have the right to say, if they say, well, how much are you paying? That's where this, because what do most carriers ask brokers? How much are you paying? And you say, I'm paying $2,000. They say, well, can't you do better? I don't
pay $2,000. That's the problem with most brokers. That's the problem with most brokers, to be honest. Because now the problem is now you're guiding that carrier to the price that they think they should haul it for.
So therefore, the step one has to be the FMCSA and the TIA needs to go to all the load board providers out there, and it has to be illegal that there's because then they should not be allowed to post a rate.
Step one should be you need to know your numbers. Step one, you need to truck driver should know his numbers and his profit margin and what he wants to make, and they don't.
Right, but here's the problem. You can know your numbers.
Okay.
If you work in a certain lane and you know your numbers saying, I want $1.50 on all miles. Well, guess what? Or I need $2 a mile on all miles. Then therefore, no truck, if let's say 80% of all the truckers in the United States, over the million drivers out there, a million carriers out there, a million truckers out there, say, we won't do nothing for less than $2 a mile. Have you ever negotiated up on a price for your carrier? To the carrier? Have you ever told your carrier that's not enough money, you should charge more? Yes. To the carrier? Yeah, I'll say because of these circumstances and this load, I want to pay you more. And they're like, okay. Okay, we're very few. Me and you are very, very, very few. I bet you if anybody's in there in the trucking. No, I've done it. Well, I could have, because I'm very fair. Like I know brokers where I've said I was prepared to pay. Let's say I call one of my regular carriers, right? I said, hey, John or Sally in dispatch. They know me. I know them. I say I got a load, a flatbed load or van load from point A to point B. What do you think you need this week? Well, I'll do it for $2,000 or $2,200, and I was prepared to pay $25. And they'll say, oh boy, I was willing to pay you more. What? But most brokers would say, great, I'll book it. Right. And then they pocket the extra they pocket it. Sure. And that's called business. Yeah. Because that they were able to find, listen, if I go in and I do a day rate for $700, let's just say, let's go numbers, but I call a local, and I can move it either on a hot shot or a local carrier or a step deck or a flatbed. And I've got a local guy with a day cab that can do it for $400. And I call him first, and I work that up. If the customer, then that's me making my profit. I actually worked for. I worked for that money. I was smarter than somebody else, right? Now, there's times I can do that, or there's times that I might have to use my knowledge to undercut somebody else, right? That's why you have to be very careful with shippers. Just like you said, there's some shippers that are super intelligent around their freight. There's some are not saying that they're not intelligent around it, but they just need the freight moved. They don't really care. They just want it moved at a reasonable price and reliably done without problems, right? Correct. If the price is $1,200, they don't want to worry about all the fine details. They just know that a truck shows up, picks up, and delivers for $1,200. They're happy. Other shippers want to understand, like if there's upcharges and so forth. They want to see this breakdown. They want to know where their costs are coming from. Right? Snorlander, if you're listening, can you put the thing back on the screen that you had, because we both missed it. I want to read it real quick. I think it was look at the AAA sets regulations for fuel surcharge. FMCS code 70. Fuel surcharge is for the carrier to charge brokers, freight forwarders, and more. And cool trucking, you're not paying attention. When I ask you for a rate, it is not my job to put the fuel surcharge in there. It's yours. So if you give me a flat rate of $2,000 for a spot market load, that should include your fuel surcharge. Technically, it should include all of your business expenses plus profit. Stop looking at fuel surcharge, just cool trucking. I want you to let fuel surcharge go if you're on the spot market. Do me this favor, and I want you to figure out what your expenses are, all expenses, fuel and everything. Because if you're just looking at fuel surcharge, you're doing it wrong. You need to look at total fuel, total truck bill, total insurance, total everything. And if that's $1.50 a mile, now you have to look on how much profit do you want to make. Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 30? Is it 40? Is it 50? Is it 60? And tack that on. Let fuel surcharge go and do total fuel, because that's your business expense on a spot market load. But let me ask you this as a sidebar, Sage. Yeah. I have something else I'll bring up that I think is another issue to address in the brokering world, but I've had this several times. I have a particular referral business that I get leads coming into me, people who have freight to move. And often I get people, and they'll come up, and I'll get the phone call saying, yeah, so and so told me to call you because I'm on their list as one of their providers, their service providers, a broker that they give like 3 people out, and I'm one of them. So I get this call from someone saying I got to move this stuff, or it's a container coming in, and so I'll start laying out the pricing, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's way too much. I was only going to pay $1,000, but it's costing $5,000. And I said, well, so how many times have you moved containers before? Well, this is my first one. So we have a shipper who has no clue about the cost of trucking.
Correct.
Trying to tell the market we want this freight moved, but we're only going to do it for $1,500.
Correct.
Or $1,000 is what they're prepared to pay, or $1,500, where really it should be $4,000.
Correct.
So they're trying, and they won't move it otherwise. And now it's sitting. So the point is, we're like, even though we have this case law, but there's got to be a point where we have the shippers out there that saying we only want to move this load as a load for 80 cents a mile, and that's what they're flogging it out there for.
Yeah.
Right. So there's got to be a point where shippers have to also be held a little bit accountable, because to say, well, just because your costs are high, we can't accommodate that. But hang on, if 10 carriers are all saying I need $3,000 and you're only paying $1,000, well, there's a bit of that there. But where I was going to go is next stage, and you give your feedback on this. When it comes to detention charges or TARP fees or layover charges, etc., any accessory charge to a carrier that's incurred in the process of moving freight.
Yeah.
I, as a broker for myself, I do all of those as pass-through.
Correct.
Now, again, your knowledge and time and history makes a difference, because what I do, because I can tell you, there are a ton of brokers that if, let's say the trucker says, okay, yeah, I apologize, the loader took longer, we'll pay you the detention, the 2 hours that you owe. You're there for 4 hours. How much do you need? And they say $50 an hour. There's a lot of brokers that will go back to the shipper and charge it at $65.
Sure.
Is that legal? To upcharge those accessory charges?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know if it's legal. Is there a fee for that? There could be a fee for that.
It wasn't part of. You didn't sign that agreement. You know, like this is. Let's say you don't have a contract where they, like, if a shipper says, Sage, whenever there's detention at our facilities, we're paying $40 an hour. You book loads, and,
right.
and the carrier's trying to charge more. They want more for their detention charges. You're going to say, well, I can only pay 40. They say, well, then guess what? If you're not going to pay, I've been here for 2 hours. I'm loaded.
Yes.
So this is where this is where it gets a little dicey. The shipper,
no, listen.
Let me ask you. I guess I'll clarify it this way.
Because I know the answer.
If you have a contract with a shipper that you signed that says we pay X dollars for tarping, we pay X dollars for detention. If
Correct.
you signed this with the shipper before you booked any loads,
Correct.
your ability to quote those loads is subject that you signed the shipper's agreement form. Every load that you do you tell the carriers in advance, hey, by the way, okay, we agreed on $1,500 on this load. Okay, good. We're both agreement. Great. By the way, my shipper only pays $40 an hour for detention, and they pay $80 for tarping. And the carrier's like, well, we charge $65 an hour for detention, and we charge $120 for tarping.
My next answer is, hang on. I have to tell my shipper that. Here's the problem. They're welcome to have this, but what you have to understand as a freight broker is we are middlemen. We are middlemen. All right. I can't, just like, and right in the thing, it's like travel agents. I can't make the decision for the airlines. I can't make the decision for, all I can be like, okay, this is what they want to charge you. This is where we're going to be. I have to be that middle person. Hey, this guy's going to charge this much on this. What do you want to do? What do you want to do here? What happens if you don't have the money? Now, can I pay it out of my money? I can. But what happens if I don't have it in my costs? What if I don't have the additional fee into my costs? So as a middle person, I go to that shipper, or we're using a shipper, could be a receiver, either way. And none of us are lawyers, nor do we play them on YouTube. But either way, I still have to go to the shipper and say, look, you're doing 40 here. This carrier's 80 for detention. What do you want me to do here? What do you want me to do? Because at some point, if I have to tell them, listen, you're not getting it. Listen, this says in your channel. Go to mine. If you want your comment, you go to my live stream and you can put it on mine and I'll answer you on mine. All right, listen. at that point, you're the middle person. You can't be making decisions unless you want to pay for it out of your own pocket. Is what my point. And I don't. If I'm making financial decisions for my shipper, I'm doing it wrong. I can advise. I can say this is what the going rate is, but until I have a guaranteed truck with a guaranteed price and his rate, here's where we're at.
Let me interject here.
Who are you?
So there are brokers that get on the load board.
Yes.
And will pretend to have a load when they don't really have it to get quotes from drivers so they can go back to the customer and quote them a price.
Correct. Ghost posting.
Yep. And so is that a strategy that obviously that strategy is bad on the driver because it disrupted my complete weekend when they did that to me.
Yes. But it is a strategy, and a lot of times what that is a 3PL that it will come across as an email to me. I will click it, and it will show me picking up here, delivering here, all the information, blah 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 blah, and then it'll say you have 2 hours to submit your price. You have 4 hours to submit your price, and it's a little clock, and it ticks down. And then what I have to do is I have to submit my price. So rather than that broker saying, "Look, I am competing through a 3PL." Against other brokers. I have 2 hours to put this bid in. I know I can't hold, I'm not going to hold you. Would you give me this time? Would you give me this? But I'd like to go ahead and submit a price. He should inform you of that. So now you have the decision to say, no, I'm not waiting around for that 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and keep looking. But they don't do that, right? They don't do that. They should, but they don't.
But I can go right into our TMS as a broker and look at what the late rain is. They were just looking for the lowest trucks to bid. Because I booked what I thought was 2 loads going from Oklahoma to Arkansas. And next thing you know, I was getting the runaround from the broker for the rate con and run around. So finally I call him and said, what are we doing here? As well, the shipper just yanked all these loads from us.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then next thing you know, I'm looking at the low board and there they are from a different broker. So I called them trying to negotiate the same price. Like, well, yeah, that's why we got it from the other broker because we negotiate a lower price, but yet they didn't have the guaranteed trucks either.
Right. Well, the issue that technically what they submitted was based on their analytics that they thought they can do it. You can still base your stuff on analytics and knowledge. Is when you have to make a decision. I mean, you do it all the time. You said it earlier in this live feed. I am not in charge of your company. Right? But there's probably decisions that you make to be like, dude, I can't answer that. I'm not. I don't run your company. If you get that feeling, you better start to think about that feeling because there is now nuclear verdicts coming down to freight brokers. And in that article I put on there, C.H. Robinson says this will change the industry. These verdicts are now going to. We don't know how yet. We're looking into it, but it's going to change the industry. That is exactly what they said in regards to the Alan Miller verdict. This is going to change, and I know what they're going to do. They're going to pull away. They're going to be like, nope, we're middlemen, because that was the argument they were using. So they're going to be more middlemen than they were before. And if that freight broker wants to do it, that's fine. Not for my office. I'm not taking a nuclear verdict because an agent got me into that position because they were uninformed.
But I will say this, though, that the part of I guess the two things I'd say. One, a lot of all the issues that we have in this trucking industry, brokers, carriers, relationships, people getting mad about this and that, is often stemmed from the shippers that play the games. There are shippers that are fantastic. They have 3-4 providers. They don't play games. They kind of rely on those 3 or 4 to provide the services in different ways. But there's the shippers out there that they have 10 brokers that they email a flock of loads to. And then they play the cheap game, and unless they're in an urgent where their customer on the other end is expecting a higher level service, then sometimes they'll pay more faster. But if they have freight that's not rushed, it's just a warehouse transfer and stuff, they will sit there and play the games and let the brokers fight amongst themselves for this freight.
Correct. Right? That's business.
Right. I mean, that's business.
You brought up a thing that if they won't pay $40, I have a customer that and it's either do it or don't do it. $5 million in liability insurance. $5 million. If you don't have it, don't quote their freight. They don't care. Yep. Guess what carriers do? They go out and they get the insurance. They get the insurance so they can haul the freight. So customers, if you don't want to, if they're making a $40 fee, and unless I want to dive into my profits and give the additional money, which I can, and I have, but what I cannot do is basically say, look, I can't make that. I have to be a middleman. And I'm telling you right now, it's not what the industry is doing, but it's going to be the way the industry is going to go. And this is where the apps come in. This is where this is going to be like, look, man, I don't even want to talk. This is where the emails are coming in. They want paper trails. You're seeing more emails, I bet, than phone calls because of paper trails. They want to show exactly what they did say and what they didn't say, because they're going to start covering their butts with that. There's going to be less phone conversations and a lot more paper trails. And
that's why you see those inexperienced brokers that when they reply back, like if you don't put on there, like there's some shippers that if they award you freight and things go sideways, and I've had shippers where like there's something goes sideways in a load, and they say, well, you're the one that booked the truck, not me. I'm not paying extra. You quoted me X price. Any extra charges, that's on you.
Exactly.
And I've taken my losses. I've taken my losses over the years many times.
That's my point to this whole thing. And this is where, like I said, Snorlord can't say this enough because nobody effing listens, right, Snorlord? Does nobody effing listen? Know your numbers. This is going to be the way that if you don't know your numbers, you're going to be pushed out. Look, I just did an interview that nobody's going to watch because nobody watches my stuff. Anyways, I'm going to cut a 3-part of the middle section out. And it basically just tells you what corporations, human beings and robots are no different. They're no different to a corporation. There's no difference between you and automation. Okay. So what's going to happen is we're losing middle America. One of the reasons we're losing that is automation is filling middle America because it's hard to fill upper and it's easy, cheap labor, still cheap labor. It's going to be up to you to become smarter at trucking and know your numbers, or you will fall to the wayside because brokers are not going to take nuclear verdicts to show you how to do your job. It's the same thing with that fuel surcharge. I can't change the laws of supply and demand and the laws of economics because drivers don't know simple supply and demand. Learn supply and demand. Cool trucking. If you are so worried about a fuel surcharge and that you're not worried about total fuel, perfect example why you don't know what you shouldn't be in business. I don't care if you're going to pay me 86 cents a mile. You should be billing for your total cost of fuel. It's a part of your Snorlord. Do you just bill fuel surcharge or do you bill total cost of fuel? When you run your numbers, do you factor what it's going to cost you for fuel 100% or just a fuel surcharge?
No, 100%. I mean, 100%. I look at my profit margin.
Correct. So does it matter what fuel surcharge is to you as an owner-operator bidding a spot market load? Does it really matter?
Well, yeah, that was the beginning of my video. I don't know why everybody's arguing about that. I mean, I can see Cool Trucking's point. I can see Dean's point. But the reality is and you guys just kind of, I mean, I know that Rob, CDN had things to say, and I'm glad you guys were able to hash out things for a little bit. But the reality is that we're so involved in the complexities. And I think that what it is, it's a lack of communication, a lack of understanding.
Well, to be completely honest, what I'm seeing more and more is it's a lack of business knowledge. It's a lack of education and saying, look, truck drivers come in and it's easy to get in. Next thing you know, hey, look, I run a business, right? And it's like, well, do you know anything about P&L reports? About a what? Do you know any? I mean, at what point? Like, and I see this even with I watch a little bit of the Archer, and I think Stuart's in here. Stuart, I'm going to probably pick on you. So it is basically like, look, in regards to if you're a lease driver and owner operator and contracts change, that's what businesses do. Business contracts change. If you don't want them to change, then become an employee. But if you're an owner operator or you're a lease driver, there's a possibility that business contracts will change. I don't get the same contract. I don't even have all of the same customers I started with.
No, but I guess the summary is this, because I know that I'm going to have to jump off shortly, but I would say this. Back to what Steve talks about, Sage had mentioned it, many others, as far as the carrier side goes, you need to know your money. If you're working the spot market and you're about to go in the load board, before you call a load, if you're looking at the lanes, I'm sure most of you sit down and say, okay, well, yeah, my truck is in Ohio and I'm trying to get back down to Missouri or to Texas, wherever it is. You know you're going to go X amount of miles. So you're going to roughly, I come up with saying, okay, I'm going to need 800 miles or 1,000 miles.
1,000 miles.
I'm roughly going to pay so much for fuel. I'm going to roughly pay this. Oh, there's going to be toll roads in this area. I need, at least for me, I need a minimum of this. Now let me see what the market will do for me, right? If you're not doing that, you're not doing justice to your business. That's step one.
Well, you need to know what your profit margin is on top of that.
That's step one, right? But that's how you start, is before you call the market, just like a broker. How many brokers out there and I used to do this years ago, but where you post a load and you haven't even run the miles, right? You're not ready for it. They're not ready for it. They see a load from a customer and they just immediately, it's like an automatic reaction. They just post the load, but they didn't look at the lane. They didn't look at the details. Now they got a bunch of carriers calling and there's issues. So the point is this: carriers have to know their numbers. They need to do their research. Brokers, even if you're a carrier or a broker, when you're quoting customers, the whole thing around this whole lawsuit issue is you need to be clear on your terms and conditions for the quote on the lane that you're quoting the customer. That's all you have to do. That's what causes it. And this way, if the shipper has any conditions, you need to ask the customer. I have it often like this because I've been in there when it's going to a job site. I ask my customer, if there's a mechanical breakdown, weather delays, anything else, doesn't matter, but if the driver's late, is there a financial consequence you're going to come to me with if the driver's late? Because I've had it where they say, Rob, we've had 4 guys at $30 an hour sitting there waiting for that truck. We're going to charge it back to you.
What negotiation are you talking about, Cool Trucking? You not knowing your numbers and want fuel surcharge when you should be calculating all of your numbers? I'm confused. Go ahead.
Look, this industry. Oh, here we go. Here it goes.
Yeah. What negotiation are you talking about?
All right. Let's say a broker posts a load for $1.50 a mile.
Yes.
When you start the negotiation, you say, okay, we're setting aside fuel surcharge. It's 89 cents right now. And then you start on the line haul, negotiating the line haul. There's 61 cents left. How ridiculous does that broker think that trucking company can operate at 61 cents a mile? That's a negotiation. So you set aside the set amount for the fuel surcharge, take that out of the negotiation. That's why you don't negotiate total amount of the haul.
I don't know.
Because the carrier loses position by doing that.
Some carriers can probably operate at 61 cents if they're doing it on volume, if they're a mega carrier. Do you know that?
Why not be a company driver? I can get more than that as a company driver.
Welcome to business.
No, that's not business. That's lack of carriers knowing how to negotiate.
No, it's not negotiate. It's lack of you knowing your numbers. Let me explain something to you. There are times that when I first started doing this, if I would have just been working a dock, I would have made more money. But guess what? It's the business. Sometimes you make money. Sometimes you lose money.
That's understandable. That's just that's a business 101. I mean, I learned that the first year back in the 70s.
Obviously, you didn't. So let's talk about this. So basically, some carriers can make 61 cents if they're going to move their freight, if they're going to move that truck back to their customer, and that customer that they're moving the truck to is going to pay them $5 a mile. So is it at that point, is it my job to know that I don't look at you look at every single load as one load because you're one truck. That's not my job to know what you need. It's not my job.
It's not about what I need. It's about what I can get. I'm negotiating the cream on the top. I'm not negotiating what I need. That's business.
No.
You negotiate your profit. You don't negotiate what you need.
Exactly. So how much do you need? What is your numbers?
Well, I don't want to divulge that on air.
Then what's your profit margin on top of your numbers?
I want to make $1 a mile profit.
Okay. $1 a mile profit. Okay. So at that point, you're negotiating that. So if I post a load and you look at my load and you can do it and make $1 a mile profit, do you just say, there's my price? Or do you come in and panhandle?
No, I come in and I start. This is what I'm going to start doing. I haven't been doing this, but I'm going to set aside the fuel surcharge. We're going to make that a ground rule right off the beginning of the negotiation, and then I'm going to tell him we're going to negotiate line haul. And then when he comes back at 61 cents, I'm going to tell him, do you think I can operate this after fuel? Because fuel's gone. You've already spent the fuel.
No, listen to me.
So now we're talking what the company makes. There's no trucking company out here that can operate on 61 cents. I don't care who it is. It could be JB Hunt. It could be Schneider. They cannot operate on 61 cents because their labor cost is more than that.
61 cents a mile?
Yes, a mile, line haul.
After everything?
After fuel.
After fuel. Yes, there are.
Nope, there is not.
Well,
that's a lie. They are losing money because right now the average is 65 cents a mile. Right now is the average wage for a driver, an experienced driver. So they're already losing 4 cents a mile.
You're telling me somebody that's on that no way 61 cents a mile. I see it's hard to do with by the mile because how many miles?
That doesn't matter. They use an overall number, monthly, weekly, or whatever they're doing. They use overall miles. They don't do it per load.
61 cents.
See, you don't know how to negotiate, man. I'm telling you. I've been in this game over 40 years. I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Listen, you're not paying attention. It's a spot market rate. If I told you I had a load that paid you $1 a mile, you would take the load. You wouldn't negotiate.
No, I didn't say that. I said I want to make $1 a mile profit.
Okay, so my load posted right now is $1 a mile profit to you. Are you just going to take it?
There's a lot of times I see loads on there and I'm fine with it. I don't negotiate any rate because I'm happy with it and I'm not going to beat the broker up.
Okay.
Because they get beat up enough. Now, next time I call him, he's going to remember this guy did not beat me up last time, so I'm going to give him a little more.
Okay, so
that's negotiation.
Listen, I don't have to negotiate with you at all.
That's true. Hang the damn phone up. I'll go to the next guy.
Right. So my point is what my point was. If you're negotiating your fuel surcharge, why would you negotiate a fuel surcharge? If it's not enough,
because that's federal regulation. It's the carrier's chip. And you're talking about tarping. Tarping isn't in the federal regulations.
I didn't say it was.
Fuel surcharge is. And it's a position the federal government gave carriers to have over the cheap brokers and freight forwarders, and there's one other one that they stated in the regulations.
So when you give me a rate, you give me an all-in rate.
Well, see, now you're taking away my negotiation chip. Because if you set aside the fuel surcharge, we talk line haul, you're trying to peddle it for $1.25, $1.50 a mile. That ain't going to work for me. Because now it's 61 cents instead of $1.50.
When you negotiate and I say the load, I say, how much do you want? How much? I have a load going from New
All right, let's do a mock negotiation here.
Hang on, cool. Can I just interject real quick? Cool Trucking is something that I can say is I agree with you what you're talking about with the fuel surcharges as your chip. However, sometimes what we have to take in the marketplace is your audience. There are some brokers that really could give two bits about a fuel surcharge. They really don't. They don't care about that. Others are willing to listen to you and respect what you're saying. So the point is, when I used to be at Coca-Cola and I dealt with a Walmart manager at Coca-Cola, one of the biggest companies, we didn't come out there and flex our muscles. No, instead, Coca-Cola, we had a Bible, like a book this thick. We learned everything about Walmart, all the terminology. So when I went and talked to a Walmart manager I didn't tell them about how we discussed our business. Like we talk cost per mile. Well, in Coca-Cola, we talk our profit, the way we talk about our cost and our operations and stuff. No, we used all the Walmart lingo. So what I'm saying, where I'm going with this, hang on, no, where I'm going with this is this. And if you need to, I've shared this with Snorload, and I think maybe Jeff, but I could, if not, I can pass it on to you. I have a couple of little Excel tools that before you call in a load, you've done your numbers. You know where you need to be. And then what you do is if you talk to the broker and you bring up the word fuel surcharge, and you could tell by reading the broker, they're not interested in that. You negotiate behind the scenes yourself.
At the point.
You're, in your mind, you're having the fuel surcharge, you're talking to yourself, but you just have to know the audience. So I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but if you're pressing on a broker about fuel surcharge and they don't care, they're gonna hang up and find a carrier that's just gonna give them a flat rate and move on.
Real quick. Should you cover just the fuel surcharge, or should you cover all of your cool trucking?
It's not about the fuel.
The question.
It's about the negotiation position. You're not understanding me.
I'm understanding. Answer the question. Should you cover just the fuels? When you go to give me a rate, should it cover 100% of the fuel, or should it cover the fuel surcharge?
Well, it's 100%, but
okay, now
the fuel surcharge covers 100% of the fuel if you get the right mileage per gallon with your truck. In fact, the fuel surcharge will actually pay you profit.
It is not designed
if you get a good fuel mileage with your truck.
It's not designed to cover 100% of the fuel. It is designed to cover above 100. Now,
do you even know how fuel surcharge works?
Yes, I know how fuel surcharge works.
All right, let's hear you explain it, and then I'll tell you if you're wrong.
You should finish one of my questions first. Can we do that?
Of course, I bid in there to pay for all the fuel.
Perfect. So now your expenses should also include all your expenses, right?
It does, yes.
Perfect.
And that's why 61 cents isn't going to pay all the expenses.
Oh, cool trucking. Let 61 cents go. That's not my load.
No, we use that as an example. That's what we're going by. That example. $1.50 a mile gross on this load.
Not using
89 cents is fuel surcharge. That leaves 61 cents left. That's our example we're going by.
Now, when you figure out your price, do you factor in what you want your profit margin to be?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when I ask you for your rate, I ask you, what is your rate? Make up a number. Give me a number.
Well, okay, 89 cents, $1.89. I would be about, my expenses, probably $2.50 a mile, $2.40 a mile.
Perfect. And let's say $2.40 a mile equals $2,400. Let's say $1,000. Let's do that, right? Perfect. Okay. $2,400. All right, I'll call you back.
But let's say a carrier calls you up and we're discussing fuel surcharge, and then he calls it. The fuel surcharge is not for the shipper. It's not for the customers. It's for the carriers to circumvent the cheap brokers out here. That's why that was put there. It was put there back in the 70s because of the embargo and because of the major strike that happened back then.
Wow. So this right here is exactly why spot market and contracted people you don't understand. When I do
wait a minute. All freight is contract freight. You either contract it to the carrier or you contract it to a broker, but it's all under contract.
When I do a contracted rate and I'm going to do the same load over and over again, I might do it for, let's just use simple numbers, $1.75 a mile plus fuel surcharge based on a bi-weekly basis.
Okay.
All right. That's when fuel surcharge comes into play, because I'm literally charging and paying more based on the fuel surcharge. It could go up, it can go down to the customer. So their base pay is based on the $1.75 plus the fuel surcharge on a bi-weekly basis. And then I'm paying the carrier, let's just say, make my life simple, $1.70 times that plus the fuel surcharge on a bi-weekly basis. That's when fuel surcharge comes into play, because you're never going to get a different base number. You're never going to get a different line haul.
See, that's where you don't understand. The fuel surcharge is not for the customer.
Listen to me.
You cannot go to a customer. See, your guys are getting gifts. when the customer are giving you fuel surcharge in your contract.
No,
Because they are not even supposed to deal with fuel surcharge. It's between the carrier and the brokers. I just spent all day yesterday reading the regulations on this. I'm telling you, that's what it is.
Rob,
Has nothing to do with the shippers.
Rob, when you go to a contract freight and you're going to bid a contract for 6 months to a year, and the trucking company says, I'll do it for $1.50. I'm going to use simple numbers, right? And I know, and now you go to the customer and you say, we're going to do it for $1.75 plus fuel surcharge on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly surcharge, correct?
Yep, that's right.
You bill the customer for the fuel surcharge, correct?
If I think, okay, so to be clear, so let's take a step back. We need to make some clarifications here, because when we do a load like that, let's say my customer wants me to lock into like a rate for 6 months, 12-month contract. It's not a contract per se, like, you know, it's not a true contract. I call it a spot market contract, where they want me to say, they want to know that, hey, for the next year, they have this one lane. They do a bunch of stuff, but there's one specific lane that they want a price locked in for the year. And I say, well, I can't guarantee you.
No, let's say it's different. What I'm talking about is like when I used to bid on van freight.
Yeah.
We had 3 loads going out a week, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Right.
Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a year. We were going to go to the same delivery location and pick up at the same pickup location.
Right.
So, and back then I bid $1.75 a mile
plus fuel surcharge.
Fuel surcharge to the customer.
Right. Now, here's the key. Here's the key with the fuel surcharge, because here's the problem in the trucking industry. While fuel surcharge does exist, it's not consistent. And Cool Trucking, you probably, you know, now you've been around the block. Every carrier has, some carriers charge per mile, cents per mile. Some say, well, when the fuel is between these 2 points, between $1.70 to $1.74, we pay this much percentage. And if it's between $1.74, they have a whole chart laid out there.
Let's make these.
That's one point. They have a half a dozen formulas in the regulations.
The whole point about, if you are working on a fuel surcharge, the number one keys is that, yes, the broker should not be charged. If a shipper says we are paying a fuel surcharge, then in that case, to what Sage is saying, if a shipper says to me, Rob, when you charge me $1,500, I want you to break that down into fuel surcharge. I want whatever that is. So if you're breaking down, if a customer is asking you to break it down, when you and I, if you called me on the spot market, what I would do, because if I'm busy, I want to quickly get that load booked. So if I'm paying the customer $1,500, which includes the fuel, and I just have to break it backwards, then I would turn around and say, okay, when I book it with you, it's going to be, I'm paying you $1,200. Okay. Right. I'm going to break out the fuel surcharge, tell the carrier, hey, okay, it's $1,200. I'm going to show it to you as a base plus this plus fuel surcharge. Are you okay with that? And they'll say, yeah, that's fine.
Right. And that's cents per mile. Cause that way we can.
That's exactly what, yes. That's exactly right.
Because I have carriers right now, they're not charging me percent like cents per mile. I had carriers that I'm paying them the exact same rate I've always paid them, but they've added, first they started when the fuel went up, they said, Rob, these are my flatbed carriers I'm talking about. They added 7%. Now it's 20%. So it's the same price. I can go back 2 years ago with that same carrier. It's the same line haul price. They just added 20% fuel to it, and I put it on my customer. I tell them add the fuel
according to what the fuel is at that point. Yes, that's basic stuff there.
But I'd say the caveat here is this: when we get into fuel surcharge business, if you are working in it, the number one thing that we all have to come to agreement, because I've seen tenders, requests for proposals, where the shipper, and there's a particular shipper in mind that if I said the name, everyone would know it. They're a massive carrier, massive shipper, and they lay out these ridiculous fuel surcharges. It's nowhere where it needs to be in the marketplace. It doesn't even cover the fuel. Because remember, so I'd say fuel surcharge, when you're working with fuel surcharge with a broker, if that's what you're doing, if your stick is, if you've established, I've always said this, at the beginning, when you first work with a new broker, now you can, once you've established with them, if you start moving some regular freight, that's when you can say to them, hey, you know what, we've done 5-6 loads together. Is my service good for you? Yeah, you've done great for me. Great. You've established you have that point. Now.
All right. Until he comes back real quick. So basically then what happens is I go to that shipper and I say it's this much money. And then I charge the shipper the fuel surcharge. And then I pay the carrier the fuel surcharge. So now you're every week or let's say bi-weekly, but it used to be every week for me. Every week on Tuesday, when the fuel surcharge came out according to the DOE, I would then pay the carrier, let's say 5 more cents. Let's say it went up and you got 5 more cents. Okay? But your line haul is always the same.
Yeah, see, now listen. See, you guys are missing a big point here. When you as brokers go to the customer and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, and the rate equals out to $5 a mile. Okay, then the carrier calls you up and you say, okay, the surcharge is 89 cents and we'll pay you $2.11 plus the 89 cents. And then your profit is up to that $5 a mile. That's how the business works.
Listen to me. No, that's a contracted rate. That means you came to me and I asked you, how much will you haul this for the next year? And you said, I'll haul it for $1.75 a mile plus fuel surcharge. Now,
but me as a broker, I wouldn't do that. I would say instead of $1.75 plus fuel, I would say $3.75 plus fuel, and then that would be the broker's profit margin.
Bro, he's
Cool Trucking. He put 25 cents profit on the rate per mile plus fuel.
Correct. Would you listen for 1 second? All right. Now you said you do it for $1.75 a mile. You're a trucker. I then say plus fuel surcharge. You say yes. I then go to the customer and say, I'll do it for $2 a mile plus fuel surcharge. My problem.
Yeah, okay. I say, yeah, the same principle. I just was using different numbers.
Perfect. Now, that's when fuel surcharge comes into play because you're going to get either more money or less money based on the price of fuel. But on a spot market load, when it's going to be a one-time deal, one-time situation, it's flat rate. Just tell me how much for you to haul this
right.
one.
And I think the other part is that with fuel surcharge, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you come out like Cool Truck and you have your truck, if let's say you have a broker, you and I are working together on lanes and we agree that, hey, when I work with Cool Trucking, I'm going to pay you a fuel surcharge of X amount. That fuel surcharge, you and I have to establish, because that means that when you came into the marketplace, you came in, and that's what back in the 70s and then back in like I mentioned this earlier, when I first started as a broker, the assumption was this: the base level back when I started was $1.20. Carriers expected that, hey, if you know that you're calling me on a load that's 1,000 miles, right, and you're getting 6 miles, say it was 5 miles to the gallon, so 1,000 divided by 5, that's going to be 200 gallons times $1.20. So you've assumed $240 you're paying for fuel before you bug anyone for extra dollars. You're assuming that as part of your cost of operation. Now,
right, exactly.
As a broker and as a carrier, we look at the lane that you're running. Let's say, I know the price is not, but just for the sake of the example, you and I, we're discussing a lane and we're looking at it, we're saying, well, where you're picking up, the current price is $1.27 at that origin. The destination point is, say, $1.18. So as a broker, I take $1.17 plus $1.18 divided by 2. And the average is $1.22.5, so $1.23. So therefore, you're eligible for that 3 cents. The extra 3 cents you're paying on the 3 cents a gallon you're paying, you're eligible for the fuel surcharge.
Perfect. Now that's based on a contract.
But that's not how I calculate. It's penny for every nickel above $1.25. Well, I just read yesterday in the regulations it's $1.10 really. So a penny for every nickel above $1.10.
That regulation, the $1.10 is ridiculous in 2022 when the price.
Well, it probably is, but that's in the regulation. They need to change it.
All right, now. A second. Hang on.
See, that's what I'm going by. I'm going by what the law says.
So I realize this. So the whole summary is this. My point is this. If you work, go ahead, Sage. Go ahead, Sage.
Listen. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and figure out the fact that you want to even put fuel surcharge into your rate shouldn't even matter. Because
but it gives us negotiation position. That's what this discussion is about. The carrier's negotiation position against the broker to get their rates higher. No. That's what this is all about.
That means nothing to me. I don't care.
It means everything to me.
No, it shouldn't. I don't understand why you think this is a negotiation tactic. At fuel price, you need to factor how much fuel is going to be total. I swear to God, you need to know what your costs are and how much it's going to cost for you to do.
Keep going to that. That's not even the issue, man. The issue is getting your rate above the so-called $1.50 a mile that they're posting on the boards right now.
So if you would have
That's what we're suffering by, low rates. I don't believe that the brokers are operating on such slim margins. I just don't believe it.
perfect, you think we're operating on what 150% markup, 120%?
Oh, not that bad, but
Well, that's what.
there's definitely a lot more room in there for the carriers.
Why do I need more room?
Well, if you don't have more room than that, then your negotiation skills are pretty bad with your customers.
Why do I need more room? See,
To give us more money.
Oh, bingo! I don't need more room to give you more money.
Well, then it's your fault for not negotiating that with your customers.
No,
Because I'm going to negotiate more money for you.
You want me to get more money from my customer, even though I'm in a competitive market too, just so I can give you more money.
That's right.
Wrong.
That's my position.
Well, good luck on that. Because
that's what everybody negotiates to get more money. What do you think they negotiate for?
my customer's not going to say, you know what? No, I don't negotiate. I submit my bid.
Okay, that's the same thing. You're just using semantics now.
It's not a negotiation. It's a bid.
If you put in a bid,
Yeah,
and it's low enough for that customer, you're going to get it.
correct. I don't care.
But
I can't.
at that point,
Yeah.
your costs, you figure out your costs are a little more. You go back to that customer and you explain to them why, and then you try to get that price up. That's called negotiation. Man, I cannot believe you're not seeing this.
No, here's what I would say. Let's go back to the very beginning.
Stop. The customer will say, too bad. Rob even said this earlier. The customer will say, too bad. I'm not paying you any more money.
Then his load sits there, and then he comes back to you because your 3-truck example that's drop them loads, and then he raises his rate.
Exactly.
You're talking in circles. You talk both sides of the coin here.
If I submit my price, if I submit my price to the customer, okay, my price is $2,000. That I don't get to negotiate that. It's a submission. They don't want me to come back and say, oh, I want more. They say, what's your price? Wait, hold your thought. Now, I don't have the right to do that, okay? If I can't move it for $2,000, guess what? I eat the money. Correct, Rob?
Yes.
Bingo.
Unless, however, no, hang on.
On that situation,
that's why I brought up before. Regardless if you're a carrier quoting freight to a shipper or the broker quoting freight to the shipper, I see it too often where people show me email threads and I see rates submitted where it's just a rate, nothing else, no comments. So as long as if you put on there as a broker, if I said $2,000,
yes,
and I put on there subject to truck availability, because I will actually.
There you go, negotiation.
I will actually tell my customers that, hey, when I quote today, I'll say this truck is 50 miles away. If it gets booked, this rate will not be guaranteed for the next truck.
Hey, let me ask you a question. That's not negotiations. I can't go back and say, you know what? Do you know what dude, that's brilliant. I'm going to quote $1 for every load subject to truck availability and then bill my customer $5,000 when I go to move the truck.
You got to let them know prior. Oh. Come on, man.
No, but hang on. I think one thing we need to clarify here, if I can just interject.
I wish Cool Trucking, you just spent one day in my office to see what customers actually do. They don't want to pay you a lot of money. They want to move it for cheap.
Well, not necessarily stage. I would say to that, but let me take a step back.
Do they want to overpay? Do they want to overpay?
Sometimes I have customers that say there's freight that, for example, here's how I look at the trucking market. The first question is when people call on a load. If you call a broker on a load,
overpay.
Not
always. See, why do you use the term overpay?
What is overpay? They have a percentage. I have shippers that come up with percentages that are way below what they think freight cost should be.
Customers want to overpay. Do they ever come to you and say, "Look, I know you want to charge me $2,000, but I'd love to pay you $5,000"?
That's semantics right there. Come on, say.
Oh my God, let me finish a sentence. Just a sentence. It's just like you said. When you put on my comment section that the customers were coming, that a freight broker you were moving loads. I don't know how many loads I'm going to make it up. You move 10 loads at this price. And then all of a sudden the price went down. Do you know why the price can go down? You said the broker was stealing the money.
I didn't say, did you ever hear me say stealing the money? I never used that term.
Pocketing all the money.
No, I said they profit the money.
No, okay. They took the additional money. Is it possible that the customer needed 10 loads in a rush and they were willing to pay high dollar amount to get them in there as fast as they could, and then once they were full, they said, okay, we don't want to pay next day air prices. Let's go ahead and lower the rate and just bring them in maybe once a month or once a week.
Or they would finish out that 10 loads, and then on the next 10 loads, they would lower the rate. That's how it usually happens.
Oh, so it is possible that they didn't profit after that. The contract changed.
And that depends if you're on a yearly contract, 90-day contract, or what kind of contract you're
It all
on.
varies based on how you quoted it.
Is it possible that the broker didn't profit, that they actually changed the rate because they didn't need the loads as fast? Is it possible?
Yes, it is possible for a broker to lose money on a load.
Before you say that, oh, they profited, do you have any evidence of that?
I'm using canned numbers. You can't pick out certain individual situations and then bring it out here. We're using broad strokes here.
So the answer is no. The answer is no. You don't have any proof of the statement that you put on there.
If a broker cannot operate in a profit situation, they're out of business.
The answer is no. You don't have any proof that they started keeping the money after the 10 loads, like you said, like on my comment section. Just real quick, just yes or no. Either you have proof or you don't have proof. Which is it?
Are you saying it doesn't happen?
No, I'm asking you if you have proof. This is not a confusion.
Well, of course I don't. I'm not a broker. I don't have proof.
But you had no problem saying that that's what happened because you didn't.
Are you saying it doesn't happen?
I'm saying that.
Are you going to sit on here and say that doesn't happen? You're a bull-faced liar if you are.
You know that we are very competitive. Do you know that early on, I used to bid a lane, post it on the load board, and then other freight brokers would take snapshots of my freight from the load board and email it to the customer.
I hauled a load for 6 months, the same price. Yes. Overnight, it went down probably 35%.
You know why?
Now, I know his contract didn't just all of a sudden go down like that.
Yes, it actually could have. The contract could have ended, or he could have said, look, we no longer need this much product. And it's called supply and demand.
I was going to say, isn't that cool? And this is no offense, Cool Trucking, but 6 months ago, with the supply and demand, you should have been charging more.
Absolutely.
That's an error in your business. I mean, I understand being the cool guy and keeping the price the same, but business is ruthless, right? And if it means you can charge more, you should, because the broker is going to do the same thing to you. We're all here to profit as much as possible, and what the market allows. The market value is the market value.
No, correct. I understand that, but the load I was talking about, I went to I have three brokers that haul the same load all the time. It's Coca-Cola out of Fruitland, Idaho.
Okay.
One broker dropped his price. The other brokers didn't.
And easily.
So those contracts, Coca-Cola puts out them contracts in a uniform manner.
No, they don't.
But there becomes
in that lane, yes, they do.
There comes the responsibility of the broker. If that's not something he can make money on, he doesn't bid on it, right? I mean, just like you bid on loads you can't make money on. It's the same. That concept is a right across the industry, no matter what.
But getting back to the fuel surcharge, are you saying, Stuart, that is not a coin in our bag? In negotiation, fuel surcharge. Of course it is, because you can make them look like they're cheapskates.
But
if they're trying to,
I think we misconstrue the way that we term fuel surcharge.
Yeah, Stuart, you did the spot market, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did fuel surcharge? Didn't you always bill the full fuel? You didn't give a shit about fuel surcharge at that point, right?
It's an all-in-one price.
Yeah,
It's
here it goes again.
whatever the whole price is, that is what it is. You know, all that's going to happen if you want to see fuel surcharge, they're going to break out X amount of cents for fuel surcharge, and the rest is they're just going to.
It's still going to equal. It's still going to equal the whole thing.
It's a fudge.
Right.
To make it whatever.
Yeah. If that makes you feel better, fuel trucking, then
When I was with CRST, I had them break it up all the time.
Yep.
Right, but I agree. Remember, Cool Trucking, that's why I said I agree with you. Fuel surcharge is a factor, but I think most carriers out there are like, I get carriers that say, hey, I'll call them up saying, hey, last week or 2 months ago, a month ago, you did that lane for me from here to here, and they'll say, oh yeah, I remember that. Can you do it again for me? Can you do the same price? They'll say, well, I have a truck for you, but I need another $200 because fuel's up. They didn't use the fuel surcharge term. They just said fuel's higher. I need a couple $100 more to offset.
Right.
They didn't use, so it's still built in. It's the same concept. But what I was going to say is, back to the beginning, this whole conversation is all started because of what the comments that Dean made. And I think one comment that we haven't brought up is that the way that the Dean discussed it, I think his frustration in the market is this. The Dean, Cool Trucking, guys like Stewart, guys like Jeff, guys like Sandman, Snorlord, they are NFL professional football players negotiating with high school kids. That's the problem. They know their business, and they're calling on people that don't know the business, and that's what.
I agree with that.
Here's the problem. And I know you will agree with me. If they're still negotiating with random brokers, that's their problem. Because if you're pulling my freight off the spot market board and you don't have brokers to go to and get yourself, if you're still on the spot market looking at the DAT board pulling freight, I don't know who you are. Why would I pay you top dollar? I have no idea who you are.
Because of the reputation that I'm of the company that I'm leased to.
Now,
because they can look at that. And I use that as another negotiation tool.
And this is a whole different thing. You're being leased to somebody doesn't even matter to you. I know why you take fuel surcharge now, because you get 100% of the fuel surcharge.
I don't put it to Jeff. I don't charge Jeff that.
Nope.
I just get the overall cost up. Okay. But using the fuel surcharge gives me that extra tool. You don't.
Oh my! It doesn't. If you think it does, it doesn't. But if that makes you feel better, please go ahead and do it. But I'm going to tell you right now, broker from the spot market, I don't feel bad about fuel surcharge.
No, but Sage, if you're saying that it's not right for carriers to call random brokers, well, that's business.
It's not right. The fact is that at some point you're calling a random broker and you're asking for top dollar for something, let's just say, right? And I don't even know who you are. Do you pay the same amount of money to the guys on the load board as you do your normal carriers? I don't. I do not pay. If I post something on the load board, it is nowhere near what I'm probably going to pay my direct guys. That's the truth. I like it or not, that's the truth. If you're booking freight off the load board, there's more money to be made if I'm calling you direct because you've done a good job for me in the past.
Sure.
Okay.
Like that, yeah.
I do that. I got my brokers that I call direct.
But if you're looking at the spot market and you're saying fuel surcharge is going to give me a better way to negotiate, no, actually it doesn't. What gives you your best negotiating power is the job you do. And if you're using fuel surcharge
that's service, yes, that's another tool in the bag.
You're using fuel surcharge to negotiate it rather than total fuel. You're going to confuse a lot of drivers out here that are listening to this and saying, well, I just have to negotiate my fuel surcharge. No, you don't. No, you're not.
You're still misconstruing what I'm saying. I'm saying you set aside that amount. That's a given amount, no matter what. That's why I was telling Jeff that it needs to be regulation, that the fuel surcharge should be regulated for us because it's for the carrier.
Sure.
That is a given. The only thing that should be negotiated is the line haul.
But the problem Cool Trucking in the spot market is that when you're working on the fly too much, as I mentioned, when you're working with a fuel surcharge, you got to everyone has to be on the same playing cards because as I mentioned, fuel surcharge is calculated 6 ways sideways by different carriers. So one, what miles are you calculating that on? We all have to be on agreement between the shipper, the carrier, and the broker. What are you using as the chart that you're using it with? And then once you establish that, then you can deal with it. That's why most people, just like this, I know that Sage, this is where this gray area comes in.
No,
There are lumber yards and steel plant yards with flatbeds where the shippers will say, there's a lineup of trucks at those kind of places and ports. Shippers don't pay waiting times. You line up as a truck, first come Ritchie Brothers, first come, first serve. I know from my shippers that when I send trucks to Ritchie Brothers, I tell them there is no waiting time.
So let me ask a quick question. Let me ask a quick question. And Stuart, please jump in here. We already have drivers that don't even know how to calculate their own numbers when it comes to their how much their mortgage is, how much their truck. I mean, their personal and business. They don't even know how to calculate that. They have no idea. You want to add an additional problem of factoring in fuel surcharge? Or Stuart, do you think it's easier just to know your numbers and give me a flat rate?
No, the flat rate is always going to be the easier way to go.
Give me a number.
The bit I'm struggling with here, right? The bit I'm struggling with here is trying to understand how. Okay, I'm going to use round numbers. It's $2, right? Is the rate per mile is what the broker is trying to move it for. The fuel surcharge is just say $1 a mile, okay, and that is fixed. That rest really doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything because they're just going to fluctuate that rest of that percentage to make it fit their need.
Correct.
It's not a tool. If anything, I would say you're probably sort of castrating yourself in your negotiating ability, in my opinion. That's the way I feel about it. I don't think because there is no benefit to that. You need to know your total fuel cost, which I believe you do. I just think we're looking at it. I don't see the benefit to it. And all you're doing is throwing more words and numbers out there to confuse someone. And if you're not speaking the same language like CDN says, and there's so many different matrices, right? You know, the broker has one matrix and you might have another matrix that you use. You've just got this word jumble, which doesn't mean anything. And it actually probably confuses the people you're dealing with. That's my opinion on it. So it's better just to keep it to a simple number that everyone can agree on at the end of the day.
100%.
All right, but let's agree the people in here, at least in here with this, know their numbers because we're regular people on these podcasts and we know to do our numbers. So that's a given. So these people right here on this show know their numbers, okay?
Yeah.
So how is it that we are giving up the 89-cent fuel surcharge per mile because that's what we boil everything down per mile.
You're not giving it up. You're not giving it up. I don't know.
Well, you do it in overall price, but it's not. It's all right. I'll relent. I'll just agree to disagree. I just have my own beliefs.
I think what Cool Trucking is saying is that I believe, as a carrier, whether you're super experienced or brand new, as I mentioned, you should have your own little calculator, how you do your own business, so that at the end of the day, when you run your numbers for a year, you should know, you break out your line haul cost, how much you spent on fuel, and how much you spent if you paid for overnight parking, how much you spent on tolls, because that's how you can evaluate your business. So that if you're deciding, let's say you run the Northeast, and you're like, you know what, I've been talking to my other people I know, seems like the West would be better. So you run the numbers in the East and you're saying, yeah, when I go to the East, I always have to pay for overnight trucking. I'm paying for the tolls and this and that. So when I go to the West, I don't have the tolls, but the rate per mile is less. Until you can put apples to apples and know your numbers, because I mean, take this as an example for whether you went to a shipper and whether you go to a shipper and you say to them, okay, last year you spent $15,000 on detention charges, okay? And you spent $15,000 on detention charges. They're going to come back to you and someone will say, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, we should really change our procedures and get drivers filled more efficiently. Another owner would say, I only spent $15,000. Great, I'll keep paying that forever because that's half of the cost for me to hire 2 more people or 1 more employee. That's
Correct.
Half of the cost. I don't have to go through the training. I'll pay these
Correct.
truckers to sit there 15. I'll even pay $50,000 a year. It's still cheaper for me to pay that than to hire staff.
Correct.
The industry doesn't improve. So even if a broker spends all this time breaking everything down, it does not change anything.
Exactly.
In the industry.
Bottom line is the shipper makes the customer, because it could be the receiver. The customer makes the call. And if the customer would rather pay you 15 than pay 50,000 each for 2 more employees, they'll pay the 15. That's why when it comes to you guys arguing over and over this and over that, it's like it's a bigger business than what you think it is behind the windshield of that truck.
Right. So that's why more often than, like, for example, more often than not, what you have to, the whole thing is about not just the fuel. like if you call a broker and you kind of got a sense of which shipper it's going to be, if it's a certain company that has notorious long loading times and so forth, when you're negotiating with that, you need to look at the origin, where it's picking up, what are the circumstances, where is it delivering, what am I going to encounter, where am I running, how many days is this load going to take, all of that. Because if a broker has a load for $1,000, but they want it sitting there for 3 days, to take 3 days to deliver it, but it should be done in a day and a half, that should be affecting your rate. All those factors. So not just fuel. And I think that's the whole point that the Dean had, is that when it comes to negotiations, that sometimes what the brokers, often what a lot of unexperienced carriers are doing when they're asking, if a broker post load for 1,000 and the broker, someone says, I want 1,200, they're just basically getting a couple $100 more for maybe fuel or whatever.
Know their numbers. What happens if that 1,000's enough? I have carriers that just be like, I'll take that load. Okay. And they take it. I have people that just say, I'll take it, because they know their numbers.
Right.
They know their numbers. And I'll be out, and then I've got guys that want to panhandle. And then I'll be like, you know what? I got other people calling me. Click, and somebody else takes the load. So they took time panhandling me for a load that I have loads, that legal loads that I could pay $5 a mile for a legal hot shot load. Do you think somebody's going to basically ask me for more money on that load? If they ask me for more money, I mean, you at that point, if they're going to be like, well, I need this, I need this, I need this. All right, thank you for your bid, and I'll move on to somebody else.
All right, guys. Snore Lord, I'm sorry about all this, man. I didn't mean to take it off the rails, but I'm going to jump out of here, guys.
It's all right, Bill. Thanks for coming in.
Yep.
Hey,
I blame Stuart. I blame Stuart.
Here's the thing. So we're going to go back to, because I'm a simple-minded man.
Yes.
There are some markets that don't support some people's expenses. So
correct.
In my opinion, if I sit there and take up all the time to calculate my costs, and then I take a load to Denver,
mm-hmm.
I immediately take the profit from the Denver load and add it to the load that I'm going to take a hit coming out. And then it becomes a law of averages. How long do I sustain at whatever profit margin? And that's kind of what gets lost, because if I guarantee you that if your costs are $280 a mile,
mm-hmm. Cost, okay,
in dry van, and cost. There are people with costs that high. Trust me on this.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
And then they take a load to Miami because it paid well, because it went, they got $350 a mile to do it. And then they deadhead out because they don't understand that at least fuel is a cost coming out, and they don't protect the profit from the last load. A lot of people don't know how to do the cost averages, because I guarantee you that if your cost is over $2 a mile,
mm-hmm.
you're not getting $2 a mile out of Miami.
God, no.
So I don't do calculations on each individual load.
Toss this guy. Go ahead.
It's about staying above a certain number for my profit margin, as it is probably on your end.
Well, let me ask this.
There are loads that you're going to lose on, and there are loads that you're going to win on.
Let me ask this.
It's the same concept, right?
Real quick, the guys that you bring on, and I know I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Do you ask them what their numbers are? And if they don't know, you at least say, well, we better figure this out or we're screwed, right?
Well, that's part of my service. When someone has, hey, Steve, I want rig runners to help me come up with a plan and dispatch and all that. That's the first thing I ask them. What are your needs? What are your numbers? I had a person come up to me months ago and said, hey, Steve, I'm thinking about buying a trailer because power only isn't working for me. And I asked him, the first thing I asked him is, what's your cost now? And how much would that add to buying a trailer, add to those costs? And he couldn't tell me. That person is now out of business. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because he overextended himself, not knowing what his numbers were. Right. So the all this discussion that we've had for the last 3 hours, it's about knowing. And unfortunately, in trucking, a lot of people enter a business because they don't need a business plan.
Correct.
The smarter carriers come up with a business plan.
Mm-hmm.
But I know people that are doing lease purchases on trucks that don't even check the credit of the person that they're giving a truck to. I mean, that's what brings the business down. So that's the purpose of my channel is, hey, you know what? Pay attention. Figure out how to adjust when things go wrong, because things will go wrong. There might be a time when you find yourself in Miami. There might be a time when you find yourself in Denver. And if your costs are so high and you can't miss a beat, that taking a hit out of Denver or taking a hit out of Miami, whether it's a deadhead or a low paying load, there's a problem there. And that's low fuel covered a lot of that. High rates and low fuel covered a lot of it. Now that the storm is here, that I've been telling people for the last year is here, people are figuring out just how weak their foundations are. And so, if Bill wants to calculate fuel surcharge and call it something else, that's him. If Stuart wants to drive 55 to help compensate for the fuel, that's him. If Sandman wants to switch to step deck because he thinks that will help the profit ratio margin, that's on him.
I don't even know if he has a step deck because I've offered him a load and he never shows up.
So I have a question.
Man, you wouldn't pay what was necessary to run the load. That's the problem.
Even in that situation, I broke down. I'm like, when you said 28, I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't say, oh, that's not the going price. I said, well, I don't know if I can pay you to deadhead out of
right.
Where the hell were you? North Dakota to come down.
Right.
And I got it covered by somebody who was only 40 miles away.
Right.
But let's Stuart ask your question, dude.
So I got a question, and it's more for Sage and CDN. When you post a load, okay, and you say, okay, just numbers, say you know it's going to be around 250 a mile is what you're going to be moving it for. That's what the market is determining, okay? Mm-hmm. When you get them calls, what are you seeing for prices? I mean, what are people quoting? Is it like a shotgun where you got people at $2, people at $5, people right on the money? What are you seeing from them people as far as, because that's going to determine, what you're seeing. Do these people really know their costs? Do they have high costs? Are they just aiming for the stars and hoping? What do you see for that? What people are requesting for that? And I want to ask that in two aspects. What are you seeing now? How is that working? How was that being done, say, a year ago when the market was good? Are you seeing less of a spread versus now, or more of a spread? Does that make sense? Question.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Either go ahead, Sage.
All right. So for me now, I do overdimensional friend, but I do legal open deck. So some of the biggest things I'm saying is if I don't post a rate, if I post no rate, people have no idea what to quote. But a lot of times, let's say I posted for 2,000, it's just an experiment. And you know what? Maybe I should. Maybe one of these times I will literally live stream a ghost load and we will post it, and I'll let you guys hear the conversation. And I'll say, look, I'll let you see. People will just take that 2,000 and know absolutely. They'll just be like, well, will you do a couple $100 more? They don't even, I don't even think they know their numbers to know if this rate will work for them. I literally don't, because if I don't post a load and they call on it, like if I post it for $1, and just, basically saying, quote this, people will be like, well, I don't know, how much should it go for? How much should it? What, how much, where should I be? What's the going rate? They won't answer. They when I say, how much do you need? What's your rate?
Right, but hang on. Sage, that's not the question.
Right.
That's not the question. What the question is what is the spread? Are you seeing a larger spread in quotes today versus what you saw last year during peak market? That's the question.
So what I'm basically seeing is people are shotgunning extremely, if you don't know what something's going to cost, you're going to say $5,000 because you have no idea. You're just guessing. I see a lot more just guessing at stuff than anything on my end for the stuff that I'm quoting. Now he's going to be different on his rate, CDN.
Okay, I can tell you that as far as current right now, despite sometimes we see dispatchers that appear to not have a lot of training, the one thing that they were trained very well is to always ask extra money. Hang on one second. You guys, Karen, I just got to grab this here real quick. But anyways, the they're trained well to ask for more money, but to answer the spread, this call is going to come through. I'm going to have to take it real quick.
Okay. So a lot
right.
of times what he's going to tell you is no matter what the price is, they'll always ask for, let's say, 200 more. Sometimes it'll be 1,000 more. They seem to be in my opinion, they seem to be asking for a lot more now because they're taking a whooping on their rates. Like they need that 1,000 because their expenses are this high and they were getting that last month. Does that make sense? Or a couple months ago?
That makes total sense, and that's what I guess what I was trying to figure out. The second part to that question that I want to ask is when you say the load market value is $2,000. Do you ever post it at say 1,500 and just see if someone's actually going to take it? Do you ever just go below purpose?
Yeah. So now I'm being straight honest with you. A lot, like I had a load, and I talked about this on my show, but nobody watches my show. So I had a load that basically I had $2,500 in it. I offered it to Sandman. I told him though. All right. Now when I posted it for 18 because one, I had time on the load and I didn't want a billion. Like if I posted for like $2,000 or 2,200, what I want to move it for, my phone will ring off the hook. I can't get anybody. So now this is me, not everybody. I'd rather post it for 18 and properly interview somebody than have the thing going ring, 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 ring. Does that make sense?
Well, I want you to address Oser's question. What about the 9% of brokers that literally take the 15-day average, lessen it by 500, make that their post offer, and they won't move above? If you have a good volume, you can move elsewhere. But if you're in a place where there's no volume, correct, they're taking advantage of the market, right? So what are your guys' thoughts on that, CDN and Sage? And
well, actually,
anybody in the
before,
chat.
Let me just go back because I was interrupted by a call. The spread issue, so we specifically answer the question. My experience has been there's a few where, because I know my numbers in certain lanes, I call a carrier, hey, if I call the carrier and I say, I'm thinking about doing this lane for this price, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, they'll say, "You're Rob, that's right," or you know what, I need a couple $100 extra. But as far as the spot market, if I post a load, more often than not, if I don't post the rate, they'll call up and they'll say, "How much are you paying?" Now, how I know these carriers, because it's funny, if the first words out of their mouth is they don't ask about what's the weights, they don't write any details. The first words out of their mouth is how much are you paying on this load. Mm-hmm. Guaranteed, if I say to them, I said, well, if I tell you the rate, that means that I said, well, do you know how much you're paying? How much are you looking for? Well, how much are you paying? So you're saying you don't know the rate. So if I tell you my rate, that means that you can't negotiate. Because if I say, okay, I'll pay you 2,000, well, we need 27. How's that possible? That's what I'm seeing. I see it day in, day out. I live and breathe that. If I post a load, I tell them what I'm paying. I say to them, you can't negotiate them. They'll say the minute whatever price I say, they're trained. These brokers, these dispatchers are not like they're not necessarily they're just trained. They're there as callers. They're there to call. They don't really understand it, but they're told no matter what, ask for more money. As far as the spread goes, back in the peak, here's the funny thing that's interesting in the industry. When the peak happened, the rates within Canada and across the board just they tripled. Like loads I did last year for the exact same load that was like $6,000, I had to pay $12,000. They doubled. So, and I can tell you, like just the other day, I posted Houston, Texas to Fort McMurray, 2,900 miles, which includes your deadhead back to Edmonton because there's no loads out of Fort McMurray. Guess what carriers needed? 12 to 13,000, 13.5. I had 12.5 and 13.5 for 2,900 miles for a flatbed load. So the point is that here's the interesting thing. So if I see that happen, we're also in like last year, the price doubled. Here's what's interesting. I've done loads where I've called, they say I don't want to post it, I'll search. Like sometimes I'll search a load. Like I'll either call my carriers in my network or I'll just search the lane because I have that ability to search the lane. I'll call 3 carriers. What's interesting is I'll call 3 carriers. Now ask them for a price. They all give me the same rate. Isn't that interesting? And yet they don't know each other. They don't know I'm calling them, but I say I'm going from point A to point B, and all 3 of them will give me very similar, within $100 of each other. That's what I find very interesting, that they're able to all quote the same price. How is that possible? I still yet to figure that out.
Well, Oser brings up a point. Pick any random market, and that's what you'll see. 90% of offers are exactly 500 below. And so what that is, that's a manipulation of the market. We saw it in California.
Not always. A lot of times too is just so you know, and let's be honest. You got it. Would Stuart's perfect example. Sandman, you don't count because you're not important. Stuart, perfect example. If you think that if I have a load posted for 1,500, but I know I'm going to move, I want to move it for 2,000, and I make you think you got over on me an extra $500, you're going to be happy going into that load, correct?
Of course, it's mind games, right? It's part of
Yeah.
It's the mind game aspect that now you're happy going into my customer that you were able to walk me up $500 rather than being pissed off that you were only able to walk. If I would have posted it for 19 and you would have only walked up 100, you're not as happy.
Of course.
That-
Right? Everyone likes to be a
happy life. That's what that is most of the time.
Well, it's taken advantage of drivers that again that don't know the markets, don't know
their numbers,
right?
So that's the
go ahead.
So that's kind of the crux of this whole conversation that spins out of Dean's comments on Jeff's feed the other night, right? Is that, look, guys, as carriers, we set the price. The brokers don't set the price. We set the price. Bid what you need, know your numbers, bid what you need to make your profit so that in 5 or 10 years, depending on if you got a used truck or a new truck, you can replace your equipment, you can keep it maintained and remain profitable.
Well,
if we all do that.
That word need is relative. My needs are less on fuel than say the Dean because my truck is getting 2 miles per gallon more than his.
Right,
so
and
everybody goes by their needs. The people that with the lowest cost and the lowest equipment costs are going to win that game.
Well, the customers set the price also because if the customer's not willing to pay, they'll wait for the rail. If the customer's not willing to pay, they'll ship an LTL load.
And I've heard of with people that I know in my network because I don't network with idiots that there are people that are working with direct shippers and the direct shippers have been hammered. And they are refusing to pay because they have a little bit of leverage because they got all those warehouses they've been building.
Correct. They'll hold it for an extra week. Or you want to hear the best one? I have had somebody call me and I double checked it. Actual story. It was cabbage coming out. And they said, how much and she's like, have you ever had this happen? And I actually called and spoke with them. What the shipper did is the shipper insured that cabbage. If it goes bad, they can write off the cabbage and the insurance would cover it. They let it sit on the dock rather than pay the shipping and wrote the cabbage off on insurance. So did I agree with that? I'm like, no, I don't do food. I don't do reefer. I was shocked. That was a new one to me.
That's walking on the verge of fraud right there.
Yeah,
no, that is fraud. That is fraud.
But they didn't have the money to ship it. They didn't have the profit to ship it. So they couldn't afford to ship it. They would have took a loss. So rather than take a loss, they wrote it off as I can't ship this because I can't afford to ship it. And they wrote it off as an insurance claim. And he legitimately said to her, I will write this off before I ship it for that price. And he wrote it off as an insurance claim.
Wow.
But it was a new one to me.
But what's interesting though, that when Salmon says that carriers set the pricing, they do to a degree, but yet the marketplace allows the click and go apps that some of them don't have that bid option, that it's take it or leave it. So it's not necessarily that you don't have to take those low pricing, but it's the broker setting the price on that lane. And another example would be when I first started, like this is probably 15 years ago, or maybe it went back, 13, 14 years ago now. I was doing flatbed loads out of Salt Lake City coming into Alberta. And so all of a sudden I had an opportunity. My customer had 81 loads coming out of Salt Lake City going into a Walmart distribution center that was getting built by Calgary. And I used to do the loads I used to pay trucks, over $2,000 a load. But because of the volume, I came up with the price and they knew me. My customer says, Rob, if you can do it for this price, you'll get out of the loads. And I did it. Guess what? So during that time period, all those carriers that always demanded over the $2,000, they all took it for that lower price for that whole time period, right? So they accepted my rate because I only put $100 on each load, right? I didn't make a lot of money off it because it was high volume, but it was, but I made it easy for the carriers. I made it easy for the shippers. And for a period of time, when carriers were going into that area, they just called me. I didn't even have to post it. They just, Rob, I'll have 2 more trucks next week. And then, I often didn't have to even post, because at first I did, but once they saw that I had regular loads for that project, so brokers can have some leeway in the market by having that volume, which is what C.H. Robinson does, and that's what Coyote does. When they go and they have a national account exec and secures 50 loads out of a food warehouse or 25 loads out of a food warehouse, they're controlling the market.
Or I've had a customer cut their sting in half. We had to ship a tank that we couldn't, the price for it getting there, they couldn't get the price that they wanted. So we cut it in half and we shipped it in 2 pieces, and they site fabricated it. So it's what I'm trying to say is that sometimes, or we've cut nozzles off of things, at sometimes there's just not enough money to ship the product, and we've got to find other means to be able to do it. So for some carriers, you can't always just say, they're going to move it or it'll sit. Sometimes it'll sit.
But I think that, Sandman and I had a conversation the other day a little bit about that, breaking down costs behind the scenes. Because we were talking about, the cost, if as a carrier where your costs are coming from, helps you make, because if you want to say, I want to run around my house where I live, and you're running there and you're thinking, okay, I'm doing okay, but then when you really analyze it and you compared your numbers to other people you may know, you may realize, oh, my numbers are nowhere near as where these guys are. They're running about the same miles, but they're getting paid a whole lot more money. So maybe you might say, I know a heavy haul carrier. What he started to do, he would leave and he went down to the Dakotas because there was good heavy equipment moving there. So he went down there, he'd work for 2 weeks, and he would either fly home for a few days and then come back. He had found a place to park his truck and trailer, and then he continued, moved loads for 2 weeks, and he was making way more money than trying to go all the way back home down south. So that, again, every person, there's no right, there's no wrong, but I encourage as a carrier, instead of just always taking this flat rate, dumping it into all your costs, it's ideal that you have, that's where a TMS system is handy, where you can enter it and you can say, okay, in this load, I'm budgeting this, and this is so that you can analyze your business as good as you can for yourself.
Well, listen, there's a lot of, and I'm answering some of the stuff in mine. There's a lot of other issues too. Stu, I don't know. I mean, I know you drive for Ultra. I don't know what the safety driving was before, but and this is some of the other stuff that a lot of guys don't say. You want me to post a load for and move freight? One, I don't know you. I don't know if you're any good. I don't know if you're going to do check, anything on time. I don't know if you're even going to get there in this day that you say you're going to get there. Or I'll tell you what I am seeing a lot of people who will not qualify because of their safety rating now. A lot of people. And at that point, should I pay somebody with a perfect safety rating? Let's say, should the shipper say somebody with a perfect safety rating the same as somebody with 72 out of services? First of all, they shouldn't even use 72. It's an exaggeration, but you get my point. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, this is also factors that get factored in sometimes, but that drivers don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that their records, they just give me the load. I want the load. I'm worth this much. Why are you worth this much? Vans can sometimes be a dime a dozen.
I got another question for both of you guys.
Which one?
Gen CDN. So, when you look up a carrier, typically, so there's always this thing about 411, but are you guys looking up and understanding who you're getting as a carrier besides FMCSA stats?
All right, so for me, it'll be quick then, because Rob's going to have a hell of a lot longer story on this one. For me, it's fair. I only talk to the carrier. I will not talk to a driver. Okay, so I have to talk to the carrier because that's who I'm working the load through. I check the FMCSA record and see what their records are, and basically interview the carrier if it's a new one. If I've worked with them before, I might have notes in my system, but because I don't work with a ton, most of my freight's going directly, my oversized freight's going to the people that I do know, 100% do know.
What if the driver is a carrier?
If the driver is a carrier, I can talk directly to him. If he's, and this is why you're getting asked these questions. Hey, are you the driver? Are you the carrier? Are you leased on? Because I'm telling you, there's going to be a fundamental change in this system. And I just see these brokerages eventually saying, look, I can't talk to you unless you're this. AB5 and that court case is going to change things. They're already saying it is. Now, Rob's going to have a better answer.
No, mine's pretty simple. The my first tool is like actually when I'm working on a load our TMS system is amazing because we have over 30,000 carriers. So
Right.
I'm looking in there to see if they're set up. I'm checking because we use RMIS integrated with it, that if they're set up in there. Then secondly, I'm looking for notes because say another agent booked with them and had a bad situation, there's going to be notes about this. And if there's any notes about other histories, I see it. If there's no notes and they're all approved, I can check if there's any history that they worked with us. And they'll say, because often these, they'll say, oh yeah, I know you. I said, have you hauled with us before? And they'll say, oh yeah, I hauled with so-and-so, another agent. So if I'm questioning their service and scalability, I will go to TruckStop because I like TruckStop's carrier reporting tools better than DAT. But I will also go to DAT and I'll check both because those two tools, if I go to DAT and I see that the carrier has 1 star, or I go to TruckStop and they have a report, because what I liked about the TruckStop over the years has saved my butt. They have a great tool where they don't act as police, but what they'll do is if you have a concern with a broker on a load where you're misled or lied or whatever, as the carrier, you can submit your complaint to the TruckStop, and you have to include a copy of the load confirmation and details about the load. And what they do is they forward that to the broker and they tell them you got 7 days to rebuttal. And more often than not, when it's the other way, a broker making a complaint to a carrier, again, the broker will say, yeah, this driver lied, they didn't do this, blah, blah, blah. They tell the carrier you got 7 days to give your side of the story. Now, if the carrier does reply within 7 days, the Internet TruckStop will read it. If they felt that the situation was resolved, it just says they don't post it. But if they feel that the broker had some valid points and the carrier had some valid points, they actually then post the carrier's complaint and the carrier's rebuttal. Therefore, me as a user looking at that, I can read both and decide for myself that that was a one-off situation or not. And if I see a carrier, if I see some reports either on DAT or TruckStop, either low ratings or issues, and I will call them directly. I'll say, hey, you guys had 3 complaints about this. Oh, that was a dispatcher that worked with us. He's no longer here, and so forth. And then what I will leverage as my negotiating tool, I'll say, look, you guys don't have a strongest rating. I'm willing to work with you if you're willing to show me. So here's the deal. Rate aside, you show me your level of service. In exchange, I will then put a positive report for you to help build your report back up. So that's another tool that we can use, because I feel, right, you may have had, just like a carrier, if you go out and Sandman hires 3 drivers and he has 2 rogue drivers that mess up his scores, and you have a bunch of issues, or they're swearing at shippers and they're not professional, and his company is now banned to go to Ritchie Brothers as an example, right, because of his driver's actions. Right? Just because you have 1 or 2 bad apples doesn't mean a business should go down. So I like to give people that benefit of the doubt. If you prove me wrong and your service was what was there, bad on me. Fool me once, right? And
right.
So that's kind of my theory of looking at it. I look at multiple tools, and then I go from there.
And mine is
that gives you leverage.
Well, so
hold on. My channel. So that gives Rob leverage, though. It's kind of like, I know company drivers that roll trucks and the company doesn't fire them. But you know what? Now nobody else is going to hire them. So they got the leverage to tell, if we tell you to jump, you ask how high. It's the same thing. So if you're willing to work with the broker that's had a couple of bad marks, that gives you, the broker, the leverage, as long as you know that and that's what it is. Negotiation is about leverage. If you're one of 10 trucks trying to get 1 load out of Denver, you got no leverage whatsoever. I don't care what your service is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're in a market where a lot, like if you're a new authority, you don't have as much leverage as if like trucking is, that has, right?
Yeah.
So it's about leverage, and Rob is smart because he's utilizing his leverage to say, hey, you know what? I can help you improve things, prove yourself, and boom, there you go. And then now he has a dedicated truck that is always willing to do his loads because he gave him that chance. That's the relationship part I'm always preaching about.
See, and
people tend to argue with me on that.
I'm a little bit different on that, and maybe it's because I'm a control freak that protects myself and my company and everything else. So I check the safety record and all that other stuff, records. I'll go through that list and to talk to the carrier and see how they respond to the carrier. I do not believe in regards to because I don't believe in regards to posting things about a carrier. Now, I have in-house stuff that none of you will ever see, but I have that. But I don't post good either. I've learned from a long time ago that you cannot post bad about an employee, and you can't post good about an employee when they leave the company, because it can be used against you in other situations. So I don't post good and I don't post bad outside of my own personal company, because one, if something, I'm not going to be open up for slander, and I'm not going to slander another company. I'll just have to do that. But again, this is my choice. This is not something. But in regards to jobs, technically, yes, that person, you're supposed to just say, yep, that person worked for me. You can't say if they were bad. You can't say if they were good. You just have to verify.
You got to remember, you're a sole operator, right? But when you work amongst a large network, when you have 50 plus agents, we have a dedicated that's set up team. We have a legal person. We have a dedicated AP, dedicated AR.
Correct.
I can even, like, in some cases, you're right. I only use that as an extreme. My thing is, my forte to my customers is, I'm a person who focuses on needs. I understand what the customer's needs are for, like, sometimes they'll say, Rob, I've got a shipment here. This item that you ship to us has a warranty repair. It's going back for warranty or whatever. I have to pay the freight. I don't care if it takes 2 weeks. I want the absolute cheapest option.
Yeah.
Then there's the opposite, the flip side, where they say, Rob, our plant went down. We've got a crew of 10. The plant is down. We need this valve, this part, this thing to fix this plant. We need right service with excellent communication, and we just need the right level of service.
Right.
Well,
And
you guys are aware of Carrier 411, right?
I am. I don't use it. I won't use it. Like I said, I will not leave a negative remark about someone, nor will I leave a good one. I treat it now. It's my choice. You have legal people, right? And you're legal people, and you don't need legal people unless you have to go to court and fight this, right? But you may or may not win. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to put myself into that situation. So for me, it's in my personal records, but nobody else will ever see that. I'll never tell it. At that point, I would never say, I'm never going to say Light Trucking is a bad company to anybody ever. I'm never going to say a good trucking company.
The reason I asked that question was because I want to be able to differentiate myself from other people.
Oh, you differentiate yourself 100%. Look at you.
Well, I am, Dean likes to call me the
lumberjack,
Jolly Green Giant, or the lumberjack guy, right? So Paul Bunyan is his thing. Like, so I am differentiated, but when I'm calling to book loads, how can I separate myself? If you guys aren't using these Carrier 411s, then that means that the majority of the small brokerages, the people that are using 411, you're implying to me that that's like a CH Robinson or TQL or something like that, right? So or others of larger size that have more resources to utilize to pay for that kind of stuff.
It's about $100. It's about $100. Just so you know, it's about $100 a month. I think it's $99 a month, and I've seen a lot. I've seen it, like, because they offered it to me to look at it. And some of the stuff I do see on there are things like a Landstar agent double broke my load. I'm sorry, double broke my load and stuff like that.
So what we need to do then is sell ourselves on the service side as part of negotiations then.
For me, now, I'm not going to say everybody. I'm just saying what I personally do is I won't leave a bad review. I won't leave a good one. I don't feel that
right, but you keep internal notes, and if I service you well, then and references, right? Hey, call my guy over here at this brokerage.
Correct.
Because I've ran 400 loads for him, and I've had one late delivery and no late pickups.
Correct. And I know you're not an employee, but it's just, I just keep that rule for me. I just keep that standard, that level for me, because it's just it makes my life easy.
Like our company uses, I see in the, like, I'll be honest, like when I talk about when I go to the truck stop and DAT, I only go when I see new carriers, but we have such a vast system that nowadays my number one first thing is I look internally. Our internal system is pretty amazing, and I look at it, and if I have any questions, if I'm skeptical, like, because again, if I look at the load, and if it's a load that has some sensitivity and issues and they're a new carrier, I might be a little bit hesitant. But if I'm like, okay, I've gone through 10 carriers that can't do this, and this one carrier is claiming they can meet the needs of the load, and I'm a little bit hesitant, I will email my agent support saying, can you please do a check? How many loads have we done with this carrier? What other history can you dig up about them? And they do their homework because they got the tools. But we do 411 is in our wheelhouse as far as internally within our network there. So
Yeah.
there. But I'm gonna have to get jumped off here. But I think, like, again, just to remind that I think that the summary that stemmed this was obviously Dean's comments, and I still believe that the issue in this industry right now that's frustrating drivers, because some people can hate the spot market, but I think we need to appreciate it. We have a lot of drivers who live and breathe off the spot market. It's a legitimate form of business. And when you're a small, why did you become, like, this is the issue that, you know, when you start going around, why are there so many guys out there that went out and bought trucks on their own, right? They either be leased on or an owner operator or got their own authority running one truck. We have to appreciate that that's what they're doing. They wanted to run their own equipment when they want to run, where they want to run. So the spot market is a tool for that. Sure, could they go around and try to find shippers and all of that? But adding a customer to your wheelhouse of your business means that you're tied to that customer now. The benefit of being on the spot market as a solo 1 or 2 truck company, if a driver doesn't want to work, guess what? You unpost your truck, you put an out of office on your truck, and you're off. No one's going to bug you. A broker, on the other hand, can try to do that, but guess what? If you have 2 or 3 customers, even if you're going to try to go golfing right now and the customer's like, I need this, you can lie and cheat and all this for a couple times, but if you brush off that customer to help them cover loads because you want to spend the day at the beach, you're not going to keep that customer for too long. So I think that's step one, we got to get over this, that the spot market is a backhaul. For some contract carriers, it may be perceived, but for others, for many brokers and for many carriers, the spot market is the marketplace and where we do business. We've made our living, and we make money for our families through the spot market, and respect that it's a viable piece.
It's not. It's
right.
and just
I got to jump. Thanks, guys.
Yep. So, well, it is a legitimate form of business because a lot of people
business, but even you don't post to the spot market until you absolutely have to.
But the point of the spot market, though, so even if I don't go to the spot market, me not having, unless I have consistent where I've secured a customer that has loads Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I went out there and sourced 3 trucks that I'm going to commit those loads to. Even if a customer says, Rob, I need a truck today, and I know 10 carriers that are my top 10 carriers for that lane, and I call those 10, and one of the 10 says, first one says, no, I'm not available. I can't. Sorry, Rob, I would help you, but I can't, blah, blah, blah. And the 6th one can do it for me. That's still the spot market because I didn't have a contract that they relied that they're waking up this morning for running my load.
Right, but the spot market is load boards to these guys. The load
no. Spot market is still that piece because guess what? If
Lord, we need a moderator here. The spot market is the load board to most of these guys and only the load board, correct?
Yeah. But the summary is that I think despite all the talk about fuel surcharge and all the stuff, is that the Dean, I think, he's not here to defend himself or whatever, but I would believe that if he was here, one of his frustrations is that he has a certain level of knowledge and education and skill sets that is not matching the people he's doing business with in the spot market.
No, for that being said, and I've offered Dean numerous times to come on, but he won't. Basically, the issue is that the knowledge and information that he has as a salesperson is not logistics. Logistics is a monstrous industry with a lot of other situations going on, and he's focusing on what he thinks he knows logistics to be, and that's the windshield view of the truck. Right. And it's not the overall picture that customers are looking for multiple things than just one thing. So when it came to Dean, look, you're not going to get taken advantage of by a broker if you know your numbers, because you can always just say, no, thank you, broker. That's the end right there.
Well,
let's say you are in. Yep. Go ahead.
So I'm going to say this. The ability to network is important, too, because out of the 8 loads I had to book the other day, 3 of them were from a load board.
Correct.
Simply because of the network that I've kept. And so
over
there are people out here that are good with sales.
Of your business that day was done. Yep.
And Dean is one that doesn't, he literally said it, that you can't build relationships unless you talk face to face. And there's no need to build relationships when that was one of his literal statements that he actually says all the time.
Well, I think, I think he would say that you can network and build relationships, but I think what he's saying is that when a broker wakes up, is that broker's number one interest in servicing the Dean's truck and trailer, and that's what he means.
Wait, I'm
Well,
confused.
do you wake up? Do you have a load? Do you focus on, if you have 10 carriers that are in your back pocket as heavy haul?
Yes.
Are you focused on finding the freight for the carriers, or are you focused on fulfilling the needs of your customer?
This is the problem. Mine is being the interest of the middleman. I can't lean one way. I can't lean the other way. I've got to.
But I'm saying how much. But 90% of brokers out there. I've explained this before. That's the Chicago model. Fits both pieces, right? You find customers first that have lanes going one way, and then you get your salespeople or yourself to focus on where the freight is delivering. You now focus on getting freight. You call all the shippers in those areas trying to find freight back so you can offer that carrier a round trip. But most of the brokers are customer driven. Sure, they want to have a network of carriers that I got Steve. Hey, when I have loads out of Springfield, I can call in Steve, but I know he may or not always have an available truck. My number one goal is my customers and the freight that they have.
Most of the brokers are broken driven because it's not my job to work either one. It's not my job to run the shipper's company, and it's not my job to run the truck driver's company. It's my job.
Right, but let me ask you this though: if they know that you're a heavy haul guy or a flatbed broker, a carrier calls you up and says, "Sage, last month I did a load for you from here to here." Yep. Do you have any more of those? No, they're not available this week. Okay. Do you have anything else out of that area? Nope, I don't.
I don't.
Will you then, if all of a sudden 3 carriers called you that morning, all asking the same idea?
I know.
Will you change your business model that if all of a sudden you're seeing carriers calling you for freight out of those areas? Because that's an indication. I had that last week where I had this load I had a load out of Houston for the week after, but I was getting calls upon calls, carriers saying, "Oh, I'm struggling. I can't get out. I can't get out." What does that tell you as a broker? That means that I can drop the rates because
Correct.
carriers are struggling to get out. So that's a supply demand thing. But the point is, I get carriers all the time calling me for freight. I don't have the time. I have one. A carrier called me the other day that they asked me, they said, "Rob, you pick up out of this place?" Yep. I'm seeing freight in this other lane. Can you see if you can get that lane? They specifically gave me a lane that another broker's doing that they would rather me do it. So they've given me an in. But the point is, I get carriers all day with truck availability, emails, phone calls that I could easily have a couple salespeople working for me that I could sit down. You could be the middle person where I sit down with some carriers, talk to Steve and the carriers he's with and say, "Where do you need help?" And he says, "Well, we're always looking for freight out of here, here, and here." I can deploy and start doing my thing to find freight in those lanes that would match his needs. In theory, as a broker, you could be doing that.
In theory, you could do that, but then you better hope there's more of him. Right? Because what happens when you run out of him? Now you've got, so if you're building a business on that aspect, then you better have more access to trucks on that. Right?
That's right. That's right.
So like I said, and Dean's welcome to come on. He was always welcome to come on. So with the lack of him, I'm giving him opportunities since he doesn't want to come on. Where Dean's point was that brokers are always taking advantage of truck drivers. They're not. And he said it numerous times before. You need me. You need me. You broker, you need me. And the thing is that I have seen shippers need trucks, couldn't get trucks, and buy trucks. I have never seen a truck driver buy a manufacturing plant because they need freight. Right? So we actually have to understand who feeds who.
But to Dean's point, and I think everyone that's been on the chat and that's been on this call will have experienced some pretty bad brokers.
Yes, 100%.
Bad information. They're very loosey-goosey. You could tell that they're just not. They're not a bit like they're a broker. They're doing the business, but you can tell that they're either sitting in their car, they're laying in bed with their girlfriend, they're at the bar, like who knows where. But they're not focused on your best interest. They're flogging out freight. You know what I mean? Like they just got these loads and they're flogging it out there and hoping for the best. Right?
Well, let me make this clear. So I have a big brokerage that I go through one guy. I'm not under this guy's that I'm his first priority. I understand that his customer is his first priority. He's using me just as much as I'm using him.
Correct.
For the ability to not have to post the loads. Or I can say, hey, I'm looking at this logo in the Denver. If you get me out of there, we'll make a deal on both loads. That kind of thing.
Correct.
And the dean and I have never agreed on the relationship thing. I did a separate video about that, a recorded video, and he disagreed. And we've always had that discussion. He has an argument with everybody, with Sage, with Sanborn, with Pigtail, and look, it's part of the game. Sales is part of the game. Negotiating is part of the game. Leverage is part of the game. And I find that, one of the guys I'm dispatching, I know the other guy that was dispatching him, he did primarily the same thing. He found 3 or 4 brokers that makes the money for him. And that's exactly what I did. And it's what I did for my own truck. That's what I do for a lot of my trucks. And that works in my, it's less frustration, less of the volatility. I'm not, I don't know why he doesn't like that aspect. And he has his reasons. He did teach me some good negotiating skills, but I'm also a people person where the brokers don't care, or they don't mind talking to me because I'm not rude to them. I'm not throwing a bunch of numbers at them. I'm pretty simple to negotiate with. I'm pretty simple to use, and I've put reliable drivers. If there's a driver I'm dispatching that I don't have enough faith in, I'm not gonna use my good broker for that, because I don't want to ruin my rep. It's all part of the game. If you want to play in the NFL, expect to get tackled. You can't sit there and play in the NFL and hope that you never get tackled. It's the same thing. So
yeah, exactly. Every industry's got it. So anyways, I'm gonna have to jump off, guys. But like I said, Eric, at the time when the call went down, I couldn't get on to you. I was just I was coming in because Dean wasn't there, and I thought, I didn't know that his background. You didn't give that context, and so I was just saying, hey, I'm going to come in there because I want to. I only have limited interactions with Dean, but my interactions with him is that he was a super smart guy, and what his comments about the fuel surcharge, I've always felt as a broker, I wish the spot market was required to provide a fuel surcharge, because that would help protect, even though it's a cheap lane. We know at least the drivers then would be guaranteed to get a little bit of a rate per mile plus a fuel surcharge. So it just would help protect the carriers from a broker standpoint. What can we do to help protect? I kind of thought that is something I wish we could do. And that's why I came on. I wasn't trying to bash anything, or Sandman and I just happened to, because I couldn't get to your Google number. It says it wasn't working. So I thought, well,
Sandman was on.
Yeah, so I figured, well, I had Sandman's number, so I'll just call him and see if we can come in. So it was, and actually being merged, I must say, from anyone that ever does it, it's not the greatest experience, because half the time I couldn't hear stuff, and I had turned off the YouTube so there wouldn't be feedback, so I couldn't really see the flow. Like, when you're on a merge call, I have to say from experience that was not a good experience for me, because I don't feel as engaged compared to what we've done this morning. I think
a little tip: if you click on a link from a video, pause the video, and you can still see the chat do its thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh no! Now I've learned that, like, even this morning now, is I just mute. I have your YouTube channel going on the other screen, and I just mute it, and then I can still see everything going on that way. So, anyways, well, thanks for the time, Steve, and the platform. And I don't know if we solved anything, but we had a great discussion regardless.
We killed 3.5 hours at least. So
well, we didn't solve the world's problems, but we just had a good time doing it. That's all.
Right.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone.
See you.
Yeah, and for me, in regards to it, like I said, he stepped into my show and welcome to the war zone, basically at that point. And for me, I think that carriers need to learn how to run their numbers and run their business to the best of their ability. I don't think we need to start tweaking the system to make it easier on carriers. They need to know their money. They need to negotiate their money. They need to know their rate. They need to know what they want for profit. And if they can't figure that out, get out of the game. It's not a friendly place to live. If you can't figure it out or learn it, because a lot of people go to Snorlord and learn it. Don't just say, I'm going to do this, or, oh, you can't figure it out. We'll give everybody a fuel surcharge to make it easier so you can survive longer. Because at that point, you're just providing the inevitable anyways. You're just torturing the animal to eventually he's going to die. So at that point, learn your numbers or get out. That's business. That's how it's always going to be, and I don't know what to tell you.
All right, Sage, I'm expecting 80% of your revenue created from your live stream.
Yes, Spectre. Yes, Spectre. Actually, I was on yours, and you actually have my photo on yours, just like he did, but I don't have his photo on mine. So I expect 80% of yours. Right?
Okay. Well,
What do
I
you
mean,
video?
I've got some dirt in the ground I can give you because that's about all I get.
Well, you get a green screen. Why don't we get a green screen for you? Then you can
Hey,
put.
I said that in the beginning. If you want me to have a green screen,
Text
you
me
know
your.
my address, and there's
I
an
don't need
Amazon link.
need
You
the
want me
address.
to send you the Amazon link?
Send me the address again.
All right.
All right, I'm leaving.
Thanks for coming in. All right. Well, that went off the chain. So I appreciate everybody that stuck around. We held 30 people consistently. We never got above that, but we never got below that either. So I appreciate everybody for coming in. Thanks for the input of everybody that jumped in and everybody that tried to jump in. Guys, it's a game out there. You got to learn and be willing to play it just like the YouTube game. So with that being said, let me do a shameless plug here real quick. Let's see. If you want t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other stupid crap like that with this awesome logo that's behind me, feel free to click on that link because, you know, multiple streams of income. Why not, right? And be sure to hit the thumbs up. Let's get the analytics out there. I guess I'll keep this one up and see what the response is, but you know, I think some people loved it and some people hate it. So with that being said, thanks for the discussion. This wasn't intended to beat anybody up. It wasn't intended to make anybody look bad. It wasn't intended to inform or educate other than, I guess that's a fancy way of saying it is what it is. So with that being said, strength for today, hope for tomorrow. Peace.